All right, good evening, everyone. I think it's still considered the afternoon, maybe. And we're going to call this work session to order. The date is August 6, 2025, and the time is now 5:34 p.m. And I'm just going to read the language as written. This is a work session with the Town Council, Planning Board, and town staff to discuss, one, a potential amendment of 15% modifications to dimensional regulations passed on or about December 18th, 2023 to revert to dimensions prior to December 18th, 2023. Two, potential amendment to provide clarity within zoning ordinance and town staff on limitation of maximum of one person per bedroom and not to exceed 5 unrelated persons per dwelling. And three, coastal and freshwater overlay districts. First, I just want to welcome every member of the planning board, town solicitors, all members of our town council, our town manager, town clerk, Jill Sabo, as well as the residents in attendance. I know that there's a lot on the agenda this evening. There's a lot involved with each of these ordinances up for discussion. And I just want to give a brief background of where we are and why we are here today. Initially, the town council came aboard, and one of the first requests that the town council, the newly elected town council made with their new town solicitors was to perform a review of the ordinances on record and to provide any recommendations on where ordinances could better align with the state and where other processes could be streamlined. And 14 amendments were sent over to the planning board for review. Those were very thoroughly vetted, and I appreciate the amount of time and effort that was undertaken to thoroughly vet and review everything before sending it back to the town council. The town council then took that feedback into consideration. By law, the town council was required to open a public hearing. And based on the feedback from residents, the public hearing was closed and the town council voted to strike down and start over everything. So I just want to remind everyone that we're here for strict information purposes only. There is no amendments being proposed at this time, even though that's the language in here. We are here as a newly elected council with our listening caps on. We want to have the opportunity to engage with and speak with the planning board members as well as our town solicitors, so that way we can all be in the same room, hearing and understanding each other, hearing the same advice from our town solicitors. And then that way the council can debate amongst each other and engage in dialogue with the planning board members. And I appreciate you all allowing us to have that opportunity to do so. And just a reminder to everyone to please be respectful of each other. It is likely that no two people sitting up here or even in this auditorium agree 100% on the same thing as the person sitting next to them. So with that in mind, there are 3 agenda items to review. And just to provide additional context, the planning board very thoroughly provided, when the 14 proposed zoning amendment changes were sent over, provided us with a large binder, and I'm very grateful for this. They did the due diligence of tracking down all of the context and the background of everything that went into each one of the zoning ordinances that were proposed. So we are using, well, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I am using that information that was shared as like my textbook to reference on any of the questions that come up. And we'll see how the topics of conversation go from there. The first ordinance that we want to address, or at least in the order in which it's been presented here, is the 15% modifications to dimensional regulations. And before I go into that, is there anyone on the council who has any questions or comments on this first.
Mr. Chair, before we even dive into that, can I ask diligence of the council? We got to a point where, for whatever reasons, I'm not going to revisit history, but you and I talked for a long time and agreed, perceptions became ugly on both sides and just assumed lack of communication caused that. And we've really tried to bridge that and get past, and I hope that we are past that. I think what would help us and help everybody else is, we had a lot of hearings. So we were heard, we were saw, and we based those on what little knowledge we had as to what was going on with you folks. We would love nothing more than if we could spend some time, give you guys the floor, and hear from each one of you as to, before we dive into each one of these, is what's your vision? Where are you going? Obviously, these were carefully chosen.
This is all on the agenda. I just wanted to allow each of the council members the opportunity to just speak first. And then allow, and I appreciate, maybe I should have been more clear up front, the objective of this is for any of the, because you guys are the sounding boards here, as well as our solicitors here. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to provide any of the feedback, the concerns. I appreciate Mr. Callahan actually providing some recommendations on questions to consider before going into this, and that would be, what are the questions and concerns? We've heard a lot of the questions as to why are these things even being considered? It seems so outrageous. This is a great opportunity for each of the town council members, if anyone has any concerns, to bring them to your attention, each of your guys' attention, and then we'd be able to either answer that, address that, or take that as follow-up. So again, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to...
No, and I didn't mean to interrupt
Is that the
you,
direction?
but I thought we were going to start the agenda items.
Oh, yeah, no.
And for us, we've not heard from you. Nobody's heard from you folks. And I think it would be really hugely beneficial to all of us is to understand, obviously these were carefully picked, and you chose them for a reason. We don't know that reason, and we don't understand it. And typically for people dealing with our end of the fence, usually what happens is there's a vision. Somebody says, look, this is the way, and this is why comprehensive plans are. This is the way we see the town 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And you've never had a chance to speak that, because typically that vision shapes your ordinances. And so the question, so what we're looking for from you guys is, and more so than discussing the minutia of each one of these right now, is what's your vision? What do you see the town of Narragansett, how do you see it? And then it explains to, and then that would help shape our understanding of why you want to change all these or not change all these or whatever.
Sure, just a point of clarity, nothing has been proposed at this time. That was all struck down. We're starting the process completely over.
I said, but it would help us to understand.
So if I could just interrupt.
And then maybe Donna can start with that.
Just start with an opening statement that I would like to make. I welcome the opportunity to be here as we begin the necessary work to realize our community's shared vision. We are all passionate about expanding affordable housing, attracting young professionals and families to Narragansett, and ensuring high quality of life for those who already call this home. We want our seniors to remain in their homes and have opportunity to stay close to their loved ones. We can achieve this and more, but it cannot be done if everything remains the same. Each one of us bring a unique and valuable perspective to the table tonight. While our objectives may be aligned, I recognize that our proposed solutions may differ. I see this as a strength, and this evening presents a meaningful opportunity to use that strength to craft intentional and creative policies that reflect and complement the many layers of our town. I look forward to the work ahead, the collaborative process, and the chance to work closely with our boards, town staff, to try to move Narragansett forward. So that's where I'm coming from. Those are the things that are important to me. I believe they're important to everyone sitting here tonight. And those are the things that I would like, and those are my reasons why I'm sitting here, to talk to the planning board, get your ideas, share my ideas, and see if we can come up with a some solutions to make these things possible. Thank you.
Right, and I think, again, and appreciate that, I think the rationale and the vision that any one of us individually has will come out as we review each of these ordinances, if that's all right with you. It's kind of hard to say overall, specifically when this is very content-specific. Again, I think the point of this is to address and review what each of these council members has experienced in regards to each of these specific ordinances. I think one of the major questions that has come up not only from the public but from the planning board is the why. Why are you concerned? So I think it's important for us when reviewing these to go through what it is that's concerning, why is it being questioned, why is it being addressed.
Yeah, I think the important thing to understand too is tonight, if people ask why or how or stuff, they're not challenging you or your integrity. They're just trying to understand
100%.
How does this work.
Absolutely.
Typically, my experience of 40-plus years of this, and also members of the boards will speak to the same, if you address your growth issues, our growth issues, because we're not divorced of it either, and we have them, and I agree with you. And I agree with all of these. I think they are symptoms of a bigger problem. If you address them by ordinance, you don't end up with a vision. You don't end up with a goal that you want to reach. What you end up with is the ordinances take a life of their own, and they go. And 6 months or a year from now, you go, oh, wait a minute, that's not what we intended. And you can't undo that. Once a home is built, it's built. You can't tear it down. So I guess that's kind of where we're used to coming from. And that's where our experience has told us that if you have a vision of, okay, this is where we see Narragansett, and I think these are excellent, Donna, thank you. So then we can ask, okay, how are we going to get here? How, why, what is this going to do? If we can hear that from different members as to how we're going to do this and why, then we can formulate a goal.
And I think that's the goal tonight, this evening, is to do that.
And then shape the ordinances to meet those goals.
Sure.
Not to now be back, and I think Councilor Durkin really hit the hammerhead on the nail a few months ago, where he says, you know, it's a pendulum swing, and we have. And now it's like, okay, you know, things are out of control, so we moved it over to here. And now things are, well, you know, aren't where some people want them to be, so we're going to move them all the way back the other way again. Well, we've already been there. You know, and what is it? Einstein said if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, it's the definition of insanity. So I think, you know, looking at this council, I don't see that as something that you guys, and I don't want to put words in your mouth.
With all due respect, I think those are some of the things that are going to come out in our discussion. So I think if we can just start with our discussions, I think with our questions, talking and collaborating with one another, I think a lot of that is what is going to be accomplished this evening. And so I think if we could just start, I think that would be a great thing.
I mean, preliminarily here, I think all 5 of us ran on similar values, and I don't know if there's anyone really sitting up here that disagrees with a lot of those values as well. It's just the different avenues and the different approaches on how to get there. We want more affordable housing options. I am a byproduct of the lack of affordable housing options in this town, and not only unique to this town, this state, this country. It's a struggle, it's a real problem, it's a concern. So I have a personal stake in making sure that we do this right. So I want to make sure that, and it's not just me, I hear it, you know, I didn't even need to knock on doors to understand the struggle. So I envision any opportunity and appreciate the collaboration to try to figure out the right path forward and we're just starting with these ordinances to better promote affordable housing, to be an inclusive community, one that's welcoming to all, and not one that's exclusive to the few. I grew up here, born and raised here, haven't lived anywhere else. Maybe I'm selfish for that reason. I love living here. It's the best place to live. It's, it's the beach community, it's the friends, the people who live here. But then you get put in this seat and you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's not the Narragansett that I love. I love this community. I want to see us all get along. And I want for us to be able to figure out the best path forward for all. And with that, that's my ideal vision, is so that we can leave here or leave a town 20, 30, 40 years from now and look back on it and say, we did that and we still have a town because of those decisions. So that's at least where I'm coming from. Again, from the school committee side, I saw the decline in student enrollment. It doesn't need to be spelled out. It's a very recognizable issue. And it's not unique to Narragansett. This is all cities and towns around the state. I've read the reports. I've been to the state. I know that there's decline in enrollment everywhere. But a big part of that problem is families and younger generations are not able to afford being able to consider having a child or start up a family. Like, nobody can choose to live anywhere. So again, a value of my own is to be able to support ordinances, and I value being able to support opportunities that support a welcoming community, to allow to be an inviting community for newer generations to come in and find Narragansett as a place to live rather than a place to avoid. And I don't believe that that's the Narragansett that I know and love. I hear it, but I ignore it because I don't believe it, and I don't want to believe it. So again...
And I'm listening, I'm just taking...
No, I know, I appreciate it. So that's my, and I apologize for rambling. I think a lot of us sitting at these tables, we could just talk all
We're good
night.
talkers.
So respectfully, we can cut each other off if we ever go too far, so myself included. So that's at least the values.
So let me see if I can just, a very specific question. The council has asked for people to submit questions to be considered over the course of the discussion tonight. How's that going to be handled?
So I don't know if they were distributed, but I did forward the questions that were received as of last night, and I sent out all questions and comments.
I don't know if you guys know, but our emails were publicly posted
Of course.
everywhere.
That's why
So I have a folder full that I just printed out.
Oh, perfect.
I don't respond because legally I can't, but
Yep.
I printed them all out. And I guess the question is, logistically, is how are we going to do this? You're going to save all the questions for the end and read it?
Well, some of them I've grouped in intentionally because they were specific to ordinance related. Anything that doesn't get addressed, we will just try our best to answer at the end.
Okay.
So with that being said, does anyone else on the council want to speak to their values? Or do you want to just...
This is helpful for us.
No, and I appreciate the question.
Very helpful for us.
Appreciate the question.
So if we could hear from each counselor, and same thing Donna did and same thing you did, even if it's just anecdotal, I'm just I'm breaking some things into categories so I can come back to you and say, okay, here's what we heard. Are we hearing the right things?
Yeah, I think this is like a good get to know you sort of dialogue before we dive in. Do you guys want to speak from your own personal experiences, or do you want to just wait until
Sure, I'll say a couple things. So when we were campaigning and when we were on the road, what we received for feedback from a lot of constituents was that the regulations are too strong and they want them pulled back so that it makes it easier for them to build. I know examples of 2 families that went through the process, spent money, and then ended up buying in another state. And now their properties are rental properties. So a lot of these regulations do the opposite of what we intended them to do. So that's one thing that bears down on me. As far as the coastal stuff, we'll get to that. That's for me, it's more of a state issue. And the one per bedroom up to 5, that's also a state issue for me as well.
Can you give me any more detail?
As far as the state issue?
Yeah.
As far as the why, I think that'll be covered later on when we talk about the specific ordinances. I
All
think Mr. Colony's explained his rationale pretty well as to at least what's driving him on his support for these. Mr. Torrealde, I don't want to call you out, but do you have any questions, comments?
Going to sound like a little bit of a broken record with regards to Councilor Colony's here, but after I was elected, I had conversations with one family and then another. One family has left town because they wanted to expand their house. It was a husband and a wife, child on the way. They were unable to expand their house, just not exactly sure the specific reasons why, but they have left for South Kingstown, and that is someone that could have been in the school system. The other family has not left yet. They're currently going through the review process for some changes or variances that they wish to make to their house, but he very specifically called out that he was considering leaving for South Carolina. That's 2 kids that are in the school system. This is a very active individual in the community, and not somebody that I wish to lose. With regards to the unrelated, up to 5, this is something that I ran on. I personally don't believe in the 3 student ordinance, and this is something that I would like to see upped to 1 unrelated, 1 per bedroom, unrelated up to 5. And I don't, and then we can touch on coastal and freshwater districts as that comes up in the conversation. But the way I see it, if we can't particularly act on it or legislate on it, because this is above us with DEM or CRMC, I don't necessarily see why it should be on the books, personally. But that's where I'm coming from.
And I'm sure you'll be elaborating on that more as well. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I prepared something to say. Welcome, planning board members to this workshop. I feel it's important to begin with a brief statement to explain how this matter came before us tonight. For members of the public and those watching at home, I encourage you to Google Rhode Island General Laws 45-24-46. That's 45-24-46. This law outlines much of what I'm about to share with you. And I'm just going to read you the law so everybody, if they haven't read it before this starts, they'll actually have heard it. A zoning ordinance shall provide for the issuance of modifications from the literal dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance in the instance of the construction, alteration, or structural modification of a structure or lot of record. The zoning enforcement officer, or in this case, the building inspector, is authorized to grant modification permits. The zoning ordinance shall permit modifications that are 15% or less of the dimensional requirements specified in the zoning ordinance, but may permit modifications up to 25%. A modification does not permit moving of lot lines. Within 10 days of the receipt of a request for a modification, the zoning enforcement officer shall make a decision as to the suitability of the requested modification based on the following determinations. 1, the modification requested is reasonably necessary for the full enjoyment of the permitted use. 2, if the modification is granted, neighboring property will neither be substantially injured nor its appropriate use substantially impaired. 3, the modification requested does not require a variance of a flood hazard requirement unless the building is built in accordance with applicable regulations. And 4, the modification requested does not violate any rules or regulations with respect to freshwater or coastal wetlands. Now, the law goes on to explain, upon an affirmative determination, I guess that's approval, in the case of a modification of 5% or less, the zoning enforcement officer or building inspector shall have the authority to issue a permit approving the modification without any public notice requirements. So he can do it, or she can do it on their own based on the application. In the case of a modification of greater than 5%, the zoning enforcement officer shall notify by first-class mail all property owners abutting the property that is subject to the modification request, and shall indicate the street address of the subject property in the notice, and shall publish in a newspaper of local circulation within the city or town that the modification will be granted unless written objection is received within 14 days of the public notice. If written objection is received within the 14 days, the request for a modification shall be scheduled for the next available hearing before the Zoning Board of Review on application for a dimensional variance following the standard procedures for such variances, including notice requirements provided for under this chapter. If no written objections are received within 14 days, the zoning enforcement officer shall grant the modification. The zoning enforcement officer, building inspector, may apply any special conditions to the permit as may, in the opinion of the officer. So he has the right to put restrictions, or he even has the right to send it to the zoning board if he doesn't feel comfortable with it. Be required to conform to the intent and purposes of the zoning ordinance. The zoning enforcement officer shall keep public records of all requests for modifications and of findings, determinations, special conditions, and any objections received. Costs of any notice required under this subsection shall be borne by the applicant requesting the modification. So that's the statute right there. So this law was passed in June of '23, not in June of, 40 years ago. It was passed 2 years ago. So this law was passed in June of '23, but it did not, it passed the House and the Senate and all of that, and then it, was signed by the governor, and then it was said that it wouldn't take effect until January 1st of 2024. So in response to the new law, the planning department, led by Mike DeLuca, and the planning board chairman, Terry Fleming, took swift action. On September 5th of '23, which should be 3 months after it was passed, the planning board, through the community development department, requested that the town council refer the adopted language of the legislation to them for evaluation. The goal was to review the provisions and begin drafting appropriate text for incorporation into the zoning ordinance. Please note, at no point in the communication between the planning department and the town council was there any mention of a maximum modification of 25%. It appears that someone made a decision along the way that only the minimum relief would be considered. Over the next 3 months, the planning board made across-the-board adjustments, adding or subtracting 15%. So that was the modification, but they added it, to nearly every dimensional regulation in the ordinance, impacting properties throughout the town. Every property owner was affected in different ways. The reason given for these changes was that the town hall staff would need to be expanded if they didn't do what they did. At the time, it was a second Superstorm Sandy had hit. It seemed like a second Superstorm Sandy had hit our town. A trifecta of the planning board, community development department, and the town council, all moving quickly, perhaps too quickly, in an attempt to manage the growing interest in home expansion and improvement. I do believe that the intentions were not to target residential homeowners, but rather out-of-state investors and landlords. Unfortunately, the unintended consequences of these changes have left a mess for everyone, homeowners, staff, and officials alike. This council has walked through nearly every neighborhood in this town. We've heard directly from the people about the issues that matter most to them. We promise to listen and to help, and that is why we are here tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Jim. Is that sufficient for everyone, at least from a general starting point?
Yeah, let me just what we heard, or what I heard. Maybe
Sure.
some of you. So I kind of grouped things. So looking for, and I thought this was kind of one group, a quality of life for the people here, attracting families to Narragansett, an inclusive community, not an exclusive community. And I think school enrollment goes into that. Keeping seniors here in Narragansett, affordable housing, which this board has tried to kill itself to figure out ways to do. State issues, which are to come down. And then regulatory rollback because they're too strong and they're forcing people out. I would do two things, and I'm sorry you had to read that whole thing. But checking the council, I believe that statute was updated in 2025. And also, those changes, and I'm not going to debate the changes, that's for you guys, and that's the discussion we're going to have. But those changes don't affect all properties in the community. It's only our smallest properties. Am I wrong on any of that?
There were changes made.
Can you just talk into the microphone?
Changes were made effective probably about 45 days ago, a month ago, at the close of the General
Yeah.
Assembly session, which were signed into law by the governor.
Yeah.
Those changes are redlined on the board in front of us.
So just to get us all up to date, but I understand your intent.
No. Let me
and-
make it clear. What I read is for every property.
Okay.
So these are for substandard lots of record maybe, or are they for something else? I didn't see what that was.
So
Those are
this-
modifications.
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
This is the modification law that was most recently passed in June. So, Mr. Durkin, what you read was very similar, save the strikeout in the blue highlight.
Yeah, and what do they say, Jay? What do they say that's different than what I read? I can't read those reds. Can you?
Here, let me pull it up for you.
Even if you read them, you can't read them.
But you're saying that they don't?
So,
I mean, the modifications for everything in town.
yeah, correct, yes.
So I guess I have a question. So houses that were to that standard, that setback, and then you sent it back 15%, are those now not in compliance? Are those now houses
No,
that
they're
are?
all grandfathered in.
Oh, so you made they were grandfathered in at that time, that
Yeah.
decision was made?
Yeah, and that.
I don't believe that's correct, Mark. Those are now pre-existing, non-conforming.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
So
They're
now-
not grandfathered in, they exist, but if they want a further variance, it
Right.
complicates the problem because they have to ask for the variances that they now don't have on their property record.
So
Correct.
it did actually affect many, many residents then, and many, many homeowners?
Many homeowners have come in under it. We still get less than 3%, 4% come to us for actual variances. And that's statistically borne out by the zoning officer and their statistics. But I think it's
But
important.
it has increased the process. I mean, it does make the process a little bit more bulky for them to come in and do that.
I think it increases the bulkiness for the zoning officer to have to go through. But I mean, we deal with these regs every day, so it's very quick and easy. But
Okay, so I mean, I guess my point is we're really trying to streamline things, and
Right, and
this
that's-
is just adding one more layer.
So again, if I got it correct, we're looking at quality of life, attracting families to Narragansett, inclusive community, not an exclusive. Also looking at school enrollment. And I think what follows from that is just kids. You know, I mean, I know neighbors of mine that had to go to South Kingstown for a soccer league because they couldn't have enough numbers of kids and stuff, and that's dwindling out. The other thing is to try to keep our seniors in Narragansett, and then regulatory review, trying to, as Councilor said, to try to streamline those is the thought process. Then coastal and unrelated is a state issue. And then that's what I got majorly. Does that kind of cover where the council is coming from? You guys hear the same thing? You guys, I missed something?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here, Donna. In reference to your actual question, the 15% increase in all setbacks or reduction in height across the board was in every single zone. James, is that right? That's correct, Nick? Every zone?
I wasn't here.
Okay.
Changes happened.
So it did in fact affect every single property in the town of Narragansett, and your love for seniors and families it's great, but I'm here to talk about changes we can make, changes you want to make, because that's what we're here for. And frankly, to say that it didn't actually add an extra hurdle, this reduction of modification, because the same process still exists, it just took 15% from everybody, across the board.
So thank you, Mr. DeSimone. And with all due respect, Mr. Brady, I read this because I didn't think a lot of people understood it.
Yeah, no.
That's why I took the time.
Yeah,
to read
I
that.
didn't, with all due respect, I didn't question that. I applauded you. I actually said, I'm sorry you had to read the whole thing,
Yeah.
because it's not an easy statute to read and
No,
to
but
understand.
But you questioned me if it pertained to all properties in Narragansett.
So I stand corrected.
Okay.
That's all. I apologize.
Well, I'm glad I
No,
read it.
never apologize. We're here to learn collectively, so thank you.
I was actually thinking something else.
Yeah.
And should have thought a little further before I opened my mouth.
No, I thought I.
Well, that's
might have been
definitely,
wrong.
one of the greatest parts of the struggles here is just, like, there's just so many different ordinances, and how does any one individual understand everything 100%?
So the
It's so
importance to
hard.
this is, now when we speak about these, we have something to speak to. Does this make sense?
Yes,
So if
absolutely.
we're saying, well.
Thank you for making that
We
recommendation.
want to change this, and we're not going to pick anything else, but, okay, if you change that, how does that affect affordable housing? How does that affect our quality of life, attracting families, keeping people? How does that affect our seniors? How does it go to streamlining? Does this make sense, rather
Sure.
than just
Yeah,
taking them
that's
one at a
fine.
time?
Yeah,
de
absolutely.
facto?
I guess collectively,
I just think that could be all incorporated into taking them one at a time, and
Oh, and
that
it
can
definitely will
all
be.
come out.
No, no, I
Definitely.
think
During
that's
that- I think that's the
one at a
intention,
time.
too.
But now
I think.
we have something to measure
Yeah.
each one of those two, rather than just doing them ad hoc.
yeah, appreciate it. And just as a point of clarity here, you yourself admitted how affordable housing is
It's ugly.
exceptionally
I'll be honest with you,
challenging.
I don't even use the term.
topic.
I don't use the term affordable anymore.
Right.
Because I think the only way affordable happens
Affordable
today
properties, anything.
is if
Change the market.
government steps in.
Yep.
I'm actually, I use the term, and I think Jesse Pugh stole it from him, is even accessible housing.
Attainable.
It's, what's that?
Attainable housing?
Attainable, excuse me, attainable housing is, and even that, I just ran the numbers right now of the property values in Narragansett versus the state of Rhode Island versus the country. And we're more than double than everybody else. The country is flat as far as, or declining in housing price. Rhode Island is flat. We're up 12%.
So,
It's not slowing down. So it's
not slowing down
becoming,
anywhere, though.
It's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. But yeah, I mean, this has been something on our plate every time we talk.
Just as a point of clarity, before I joined this board did turn down a project that involved affordable housing and was overturned at the state level. So there
I'm not
are
gonna
ways to
sit
create
here.
affordable
I don't wanna
housing. You
sit
got to
here.
get government out of the way.
Hold on. He's talking out of context in the fact that we did not. In fact, we're on the record of stating we wish there was more affordable units. Affordable unit, when we talked about it, it was the density on a wetland and a tiny lot. And we talked about that density, and what the developer did was reduce the number of affordable, not the number of lots, market, the number of affordable. And we are on the record in that case of stating we wanted more affordable. So don't.
And I want to make it very clear, we are not here to discredit the planning board or any opinion
Thank you,
being
Mr.
shared.
Chair.
This is all individually based. This is meant to be educational from this point forward.
So can we talk about what we can do to attain some of these goals? I mean, what are some ideas? I mean, what are some of the ideas that we can talk about as a town council and a planning board that we can use to try to attain our goals? I mean, even if it's not affordable housing, how do we keep our families here when we're hearing that some of these ordinances people cannot add to their home if they want to have a child, that they have to leave their home, as Ryan said? How, I'm a liaison to the senior citizen group for South Kingstown and Narragansett. And one of the top things is that these senior citizens are lonely. They're very lonely. They want their families here. They're getting older. They need a support system. What can we do as a town to help those people? I mean, I think that's why I'm here tonight, and that's why I think initially when these went on prior to all of this, and I don't want to get into that, but my question was, how could we help to do these things? What does the planning board have that they can offer us to help these people? And doing the same thing, you said it, doing the same thing over and over is not the answer. So this is not working, so what are we going to do differently? And I think that's why we're here tonight. And I really would like to see if we could start that conversation. I mean,
I think
that's
it's a great
really important.
conversation. I think it's separate to this in some ways, not in whole, but in some ways, because I think the issue itself is so complicated. As
we have
far
to
as
start somewhere.
Oh no, I'm not poo-pooing. I agree with you, and be lockstep with you. I had conversations. My wife was not happy. We took some friends over to Block Island, and I stopped in the town hall and started talking to them about it. So
I mean, I think this is.
So.
I mean, I just, Mr. Brady, I respect your opinion, but I just don't want to listen to just you all night.
That's fine.
I'd like to.
I am the chair of the board.
It'd be nice to.
That's fine.
No, we'll hear, no, I appreciate it, but
You'll hear from everybody.
no, we have a good dialogue going, and I don't want to discredit
I thought that was a
anything.
conversation between
Yes.
the
No, it
counselor
was.
and myself.
It was. And just the last thing that I'll just pull apart from, I think, what has been shared here was the importance of not only building up a community from within and supporting families that are already here, but how do we bring in new families and retain those families here in Narragansett? That with the decline in enrollment and, we're seeing a lot more leaving than coming in, and then rental properties are not turning over or putting in children in our schools. So that's just another place from where I'm coming from, speaking from the school committee. So then, if we could, so we can talk about how we're going to change it and the values in which I think that have been shared. Let's keep that in mind when addressing each of the ordinances on the topic of conversations this evening. So with that, does anyone have, from the council, starting with the 15% setbacks or modifications of dimensional regulations, does anyone on the council have any specific questions, comments, or concerns for our solicitors, Jill, or any of our planning board members? Anyone like to start off with any questions or comments?
I don't want to be the only one talking, but.
No, you go ahead.
I'm just curious. So what difference have you seen? What did it accomplish? What did moving it back 15%? What exactly did that accomplish? Did it accomplish people from being able to build another bedroom for their child? What exactly did it accomplish within the town to make a difference in Narragansett?
Okay. Tom, you want to talk about? Looking for a different opinion, so a different voice, anyways.
The changes that were made by the planning board were made before it got there, okay? They were made before it got there. They were adopted, passed on to the council in December of 2023, is that correct?
Yep.
And I joined the planning board on January 24. So, but having said that, I think my question coming back to you is, help me understand how the changes that were proposed, that were withdrawn, would have advanced the objectives that you've described tonight.
So I know,
Please, trying to keep this as conversational as possible. Thank you.
And I mean that honestly.
no, and
really-
I like this dialogue.
Yeah,
I think that's what we need. I think we need
Because-
to have
because-
dialogue.
No, it's a great question.
Because at the end of the day, and just thinking about it, this is a question ultimately of density, right? It's going to be how dense is Narragansett going to be built over time? And I think the planning board before I got there, and the town council, who was the town council at the time that adopted this from a policy point of view, said from a density point of view, we would like it to be managed the way it is right now, because that's what peeling back the percentages would have done. That's a policy choice. If the policy choice of the council here is to make Narragansett more dense, for whatever reasons, whether it be for affordable housing, whether it be for more rental housing, whether it be for more short-term rentals, whatever the case might be, that's a policy choice for the council to articulate and to make clear.
Thank you. I guess my question back to you then would be, I see it as, and I see it as allowing families, allowing families to remain in their homes. Listening to the people, as Alex said, I'm sorry, as Ryan said, I was out there knocking doors too. And I was hearing from people that, you know, we inherited this house. We want to live in this house. However, we need to make renovations to this house in order to our family to be able to live in this home. And we found out that we can't. So now we're going to sell it. And then at that point, probably that house got sold and probably went to renters. But there are a lot of elderly people who are going to be leaving. We have a high population of elderly people who are probably going to be leaving their homes, which are not big homes, to their families. And those families are not going to be able to move in if they can't make any adjustments to help them fit their 3 kids or their 2 kids that we want to come to our schools. So we're looking to help people be able to move into Narragansett, families or professionals to move into Narragansett. And I'm asking you as a planning board, because I'm going to sit here right now and tell you I don't know all the answers. I do my homework and I try to listen, but I'm asking as a planning board, what harm or what did it help by moving that 15? The only thing I see is that it stopped people from being able to do and come to Narragansett and move into the houses that their parents left them, and to be able to raise their families here. It's kind of preventing it. It kind of has the opposite effect of what it was meant to be, the way I see it. Now, if I'm wrong, I would love to hear from you guys, but that's the way I'm seeing it right now.
Let me say 2 things.
Okay, go ahead.
As I understand it, there are probably 8,500 permanent residents in Narragansett, right? There are, according to Crane, 6,000 to 8,000 URI undergraduate students living in Narragansett right now. So on balance right now, you've got an even number of students versus family. And the question is, in some respects, from a policy point of view, while you do all the things that you want to do, you also basically, I think, have to account for and you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to encourage more students or fewer students? Policy decision for you to make, right? Let me tell you from my perspective, I worked at the University of Connecticut in stores for 22 years, spent 3 years out at the health center. Part of my job in stores was essentially to manage on behalf of the University of Connecticut its relationship with the town of Mansfield. Student behavior in terms of off-campus behavior was a fundamental piece of that agenda that had to be managed between the university and the town. There were 3 neighborhoods who were destabilized over the time that I was there. By destabilized, I mean they had permanent families there. They had students that were living there 9 months a year. Those students and permanent residents have different lifestyles. Those lifestyle changes can take people who are basically living happily in their home, and say, you know what, I got to get out of here because I see this thing coming right down the road. So in addition to managing the things that you've described, you've also, from my vantage point, if I'm sitting in your chair, I've got to decide what kind of density do I want in the town, and what's the character of the density in terms of, do I want more students or less? And you have, and it's a, and you're going to, here's the problem. The problem is these things come on a case-by-case basis to everybody. I will encourage you to take a look at the numbers that Mark described earlier. How many applications were filed over the course of a year? How were they disposed of? How many were basically done by the building authority? Excuse me. Yeah, that's it. I have one other thing, and this is pretty personal. You know, I think if I ask Jill, do you have a plat map? Do you have plat maps with you tonight?
I don't have plat maps per se, but I do have maps of the town with respect to each zone and substandard lots of record.
Do you have the Rhode Island, Baltimore?
I do.
I do. It's
Yeah.
on this, yep.
If it's on, could you call that up for a minute?
I appreciate this dialogue too. I just want to make sure that we're just organized in our train of thought here.
I think it's a good conversation.
It's definitely a great conversation. I just want to make sure that if we're talking about the 15% or if we're talking about the students, I know it's all related and it's very important. I just want to make sure that we're
Plat T.
addressing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I know Jim has been to this neighborhood. I know Jim owns some property in this neighborhood. I don't know if any of the four of you, as part of your campaigning, made it to this neighborhood or not.
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
went through
good.
every neighborhood.
Good. So that neighborhood was subdivided in 1918, 1919. It's comprised, I'm sorry, Jim?
You want it?
I can't get it up there, I don't think.
Oh, you want me to put it up
Yeah,
there?
I don't think I can get it up
Oh,
there.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, see? So just take my word for it. It's 3 streets. It's about 500 lots that are all, when they were subdivided, 20 by 80 lots. Okay? So over time, people have assembled some of those parcels, including myself. I had 6 20 by 80 lots, so just under 9,600 square feet on that property. But if you take the zoning regulations that you were talking about right now in terms of how to provide relief to substandard lots of record, and you look at a 20 by 80 lot, that's an R80 zone. It's an R80 zone. There's not a lot in there that's above 15,000 square feet. So if you look at the relief that could be granted on each one of those lots, it's substantial because it's of the inverse. And you're going to have a significant density there. There's no sewers there at this point in time. It's one of those neighborhoods that were touched in the sewer study that you were briefed on Monday night. So my point is that part of what I would ask you all to be doing, you know, if you look at the FAR regulations, the FAR regulations deal with facts on the ground. They talk about lots under 20,000 square feet. Facts on the ground here is you have lots well under 80,000 square feet. Some are 20 by 80, which make them 1,600 square feet, that are in an R80 zone. And so what you would essentially be doing for the purposes of providing relief there is making a very dense neighborhood. You'd have to understand that across Narragansett, I think, to have a really well-informed critical thoughts about how to proceed from here.
So just one comment, and then I'll let you, just one comment. As far as the college population, yes, we have them. We all know that we have college students here. That's part of our population. This is what we're dealing with. But we can't live in this what if. We're always making plans on what if. What if that house sells to an investor? What if this? What if it sells to a family? What if we can make it easier to sell it to a family so that we don't have to worry? And I just feel like every time I watch planning board meetings or I always get this, well, what if that becomes a bedroom? Well, what if this? What if that? And everything is what if. And quite honestly, what if we could walk out and get hit by a car tomorrow? I mean, we need to look at what we're dealing with and what we have, and how can we make it better, and how can we change, be able to change things so that we can make it better and encourage families. So if
Right.
we have to go, what if? Why don't we go with the, what if we did this and made it so families would
Okay.
want to come?
So what if we did this, okay? What if we convinced the University of Rhode Island over the next 10 years to build 2,000 to 3,000, let me finish,
I know what you're gonna
3,000
say.
units of housing on campus? What would that do to the market in Narragansett? Now, let me here's my speculation about what it would do in Narragansett. It would make more housing affordable as a general basis, and it would make more housing available to the families that you're trying to speak to. To me, if I'm a council member, that has from a policy point of view, that has a much higher percentage of return on the investment of my time and energy than 15% on a particular lot.
I appreciate the perspective on the students. Again, I just want to make sure that we're staying on topic. And again, this is all very important and relevant conversation. But the purpose of this meeting, we could end up talking till 2 o'clock in the morning, going about our personal stories. And again, I think it's very important information, and I appreciate you sharing it. I just want to make sure that we're staying specifically on the topic right now of the 15%. And again, just a hypothetical situation, again, from my perspective of the lack of affordable housing options in general. Again, this is hypothetical, and I'm just curious what your guys' feedback is. A family that's lived here for more than 30 years, myself being part of that, can't afford to rent anywhere. You know, you want to say that you want to save up your money so that you can put a down payment on a house. I'd like to think that's not 10, 15, 20 years. I'd like to think that I am a property owner or trying to start paying off a house before I'm 60 years old. But the reality is that the world that we're living in is not affordable. And the hypothetical that I'm throwing out here is, at least how it started to be communicated from the state down, was that the 15% initiative was to grant and permit properties to be able to put on that extra room on their house. And from my perspective, just in this situation, talking about the very lack of affordable housing options anywhere, is if I'm a family born and raised here in Narragansett, and I want to be able to put an extra room on my house so that my son or daughter has a place to live in my home for the time being, I would support that initiative. And I understand all of the concerns that are being brought up. I do. But the intent of the 15% and what that could do to allow families to be able to put on, to care for the residents that live here already, to retain the residents that live here already in our community, the intent of that 15% to be able to put on that extra house, it's very emotional and very disappointing to hear from so many who live here in our community, who live in a lot of very outdated houses, 70s, 80s. You go to the north end on my street, there's a lot of houses that are well outdated. They can't put that extra room on their house for their caregiver to be able to develop a room in their house. All these seniors that we value so much in our community can't put on an extra room in their house to allow their caregiver to live here in our community. And again, I only throw this out here as a perspective. It's not a driving force whatsoever, but I do genuinely care about that extra room, what that one extra bedroom could do to a property, and under the circumstances of the lack of affordable housing everywhere, and to be able to better retain those who are already living here. So that's just where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any comments on that?
I'm going to hold my comments
sure.
so you hear different voices. Doc, you want to say anything to this? Is it on?
I hear you. I love this town. They let me come here years ago, and and I'll never be a local. Like you. But
You're a local, Doug.
no, you got to be born here. An old swamper told me that many years ago. But the one point that I think should be underscored is, with regard to this adding on, is if that number's right, 2 to 3% of the people who walk into the building inspector have to go before us for variances or exceptions in terms of distances and margins and setbacks, et cetera. You guys are hearing the 2 to 3%. Right? I mean, maybe that number's wrong. I don't know, but I just...
We'd have to confirm, of course, those numbers.
Yeah, we have to do more with less, so to speak. But that number really strikes me. In any case, may not be accurate.
So,
Thank you.
so Doc, so thinking that, like, why would you think 15% would help anything? Like taking away a state mandated modification law that helped people a little bit. You know, the idea is, I mean, it seems like the planning board is focused on, to me anyway, that you're focused on like denying people who come in and invest or people who rent at the expense of residents who are here. So like every law that you pass or every ordinance that you pass affects everyone. Now, it doesn't affect, you know, like where we live because we have big lots and stuff, but the people who are most affected, that have the children in this town, are in the north end, and they are affected the most by all of these ordinances that you guys passed. So that's why we're here. We're not, you know, people with big lots are not affected. They are affected, and they have called, and you should see the amount of emails we get from people who are waiting for this process to end so they can add on to their home. And they're not investors, they're homeowners. They just don't want, most people are apprehensive to go to a board and ask for permission. You know, like, and, you know, so you want to add on like a 6 by 10 room on the back of your house. In South Kingstown, you go in and you just put in your plans and you get approved, and, you know, it's pretty simple. They allow you a 25% modification. They didn't do any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Adding 25% to everybody's dimensional regulations, so you have to go in and get a modification that puts you in the same place you were in 2023. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all.
No, I follow you. I just, that number 2 to 3%, if that's accurate.
It's
a
I want
small
to clarify
number.
that.
Well,
It's
3% of the whole town is a lot of people.
It's 6%.
It's
There were only
6%.
3 that were denied by the building department. There are only 3 out of 330 some odd permits that were granted, that were brought in last year. There were only 3 denied,
But
94% were handled, 6% were sent on to us, and that was because they had multiple variances. It wasn't just FAR, they had multiple requests to give exceptions to the law. A variance is, I know the law says this, I want an exception to it. So only 6% were sent to us, and that's because they had multiple variance requests.
Mark,
Okay.
can I just ask a question? Do you happen, as part of those numbers, to know how many the zoning board actually approved, notwithstanding a negative recommendation
No, I didn't
from?
I didn't look at the zoning.
My guess is if you looked at that number, the number would be even fewer that were denied, right?
Yeah,
We might recommend against, but the zoning board has the final say. And having sat on the zoning board before having sat on the planning board, the zoning board respectfully looks at that, but it knows it has its own, making its own decision.
And again, and I think it's important for everybody to understand, we are an advisory board. We do not deny or give permits. All we do is make recommendations. And if we make recommendations with conditions, we talk to the owner and we tell them, look, here's the things, the obstacles we see you're going to face. Most make corrections before they go to zoning, so they get approved. We work with, if anybody sat down and watched what we do and took the time, we work with everybody who comes in there. It's a conversation. We have a great rapport with the people that come in, with the lawyers that come in. It is casual, it's a rapport. We want people to be able to do things. I didn't intend to speak, but I did want to correct the 6%. I will take my turn at the end. Doc, you said?
No, I wanted to just finish there a little
Yep.
bit, but, you know, like, I think Donna was saying, like, what good has the 15% done? You know, like,
Is there any evidence currently that supports over the last however many months?
I will speak to the end.
Sure.
yeah, okay. And
Thank
then,
you.
You know, like, I just don't know if you guys thought it through enough that the people that are getting hurt by this are not the people that can afford to go buy a bigger lot. You can't buy a lot in Narragansett for less than $500,000.
Agreed.
It's not even a nice lot. So they have to do what they have to do with their own house. The people that are making children, that are families, that are truly families, don't have big lots.
Right.
Because they're working every day. And they don't want to go to zoning boards. And they don't want to go to planning boards. And when they call and they try to find out what they have, they don't have the $2,000 to do a Class 1 survey. You know what I mean? It's like they're busy trying to survive. You know what I mean? And we're loading them up with this stuff.
So just a point of clarification, we don't make policy. The planning board does not make policy. You do.
You made this policy.
We did not make this policy. We did not. And
I
I
just-
wasn't
I
on,
just read it.
I wasn't on the planning board at the time that this went forward, but it was sent as a recommendation from the planning board. It went to the town council. There is a lot of stuff that we send to the town council. You as a town council can approve it or deny it, and then we enforce whatever you send back. And that's the process.
You know, I don't want to argue, but I did read the agenda. You know, I did my research, and it said that you recommended, you asked through the Community Development Department to review
The planning board at the time
the
did.
laws.
The planning board at the time did.
And then you guys broke into subcommittees, and you spent 3 months, and, you know, Rupert, I know you did a lot of work, and, you know, I think, was there 1,600 dimensional?
I'd like Mr.
You know.
Mr. Friday to
like
participate in
Rupert to
this
speak.
conversation and address some of those questions.
So, yeah, let me speak to that. Let me set the stage a little bit about where the 15% came from and clarify some of the misinformation that's being circulated out there. So in June 2023, as has already been discussed, as Nick said, the General Assembly adopted sweeping changes to the state's enabling legislation for local planning and zoning with the purpose of creating more affordable housing. The planning board had to significantly revise zoning and subdivision regulations in a very short time. The deadline, as been mentioned, was essentially December of that year, which meant for the planning board, we had to have it to town council because of process. Town council posts and hearings and the things you're dealing with, how much time you have to do something. So we had to have it to town council in October, which was a crazy time schedule on top of the ongoing reviews of development proposals we were doing. The planning board chair at the time was Terry Fleming, and he established 2 subcommittees, one for zoning and one for subdivisions, because both of them had extensive rewrites. I was on this zoning subcommittee with Dr. O'Neill, and I have extensive experience drafting legislation and municipal ordinances. So I drafted the red line with changes to the zoning ordinances based on the changes required by legislation in 2023. And when our subcommittee was reviewing the red line, we were asking, how do these changes impact development? What do the changes mean for neighbors? What do the changes mean for neighborhoods? What do the changes mean for retaining or building housing that's affordable for families and year-round residents? And how do these changes help the town implement our comprehensive plan? And as our subcommittee reviewed the red line of the changes to the ordinance based on the state legislation, two red flags popped up about two changes that were required. And excuse me for a minute as I wade into planning jargon. One was adjustments in setback requirements in the lot coverage allowance for development on substandard lots. The second was, as we've been discussing, requiring the town to allow modifications, 15% adjustments, and setback requirements and lot coverage on any lot. And let me try to explain the planning jargon a little bit for residents that are watching. So substandard lots are lots that are too small for the zone, and I think you all know that. So in an R10 zone, lots are required to be 10,000 square feet, about a quarter of an acre. And any lot smaller than 10,000 square feet in R10 is called a substandard lot. Narragansett has about 6,100 lots in R10. 2,800, or 47% of those, are substandard lots. The town has 2,500 lots in R20, which is 20,000 square feet or half acre. 1,300, 50% of those are substandard lots. So nearly half of all lots in R10 and R20 are substandard lots. And as has been discussed, non-conforming lots because they're substandard. So the new legislation for substandard lots required the town to reduce setback requirements and allow greater lot coverage for developments on substandard lots. And the setback requirements was reduced by the same percentage as how much of a lot zoning was below the lot was below the zoning standard. The building lot coverage was increased by the same percentage. So on a 5,000 square foot lot in R10, 50%, it's 50% of the lot required for R10. So setback requirements reduced by 50% and lot coverage is increased by 50%. I have a handout, and I made copies for everybody.
Thank you. And I appreciate the jargon.
Trying to explain the jargon.
Well, we
because
can see that there's so much involved here, so I appreciate the layers that we're peeling back here.
It's complicated for both. Did you do it through lawyers? No, yeah. Yeah, I made 15 copies. There's enough for. And as Mark's passing those around, I'll talk a little bit more about. So what do these changes mean for zoning? And so the 15% really is in context of this change for substandard lots, right? And what do the changes in zoning mean for development? What do the changes mean for neighborhoods? The zoning changes meant that houses being built or expanded on small lots can be closer to all property lines, closer to neighbors, and the house can be larger and cover more of a lot. In neighborhoods with a lot of substandard lots, communities like Metuxet, over time this will significantly change the character of the neighborhoods. There's maps, and actually Joe has them up on the screen that shows where the neighborhoods are of areas with lots of substandard lots. But if you look at the handout I gave you, the second table down has a 5,000 square foot lot, an example in R10. And so the old standards, setback standards, are in the far right column. So front yard setback was 25, side yard is 10, rear yard was 24, and lot coverage was 25%. And I'm sorry, that's the old setback standards with substandard lots, for substandard lots, okay? The standards in R10 that we changed with the 15% are 29, 12, 24, and 22%. The current setbacks for a substandard lot of 5,000 square feet, and there are hundreds of them in R10, are 14.5, 6, 12, and 50% lot coverage. So there's already in substandard lots, there's a huge change for property owners so that they can build on these substandard lots. And that's by right. The town has no say in that. And I put one in there for, so the second table talks about, so what happens if you add to that a 5% or 15% modification? So it reduces the front yard setback from 14.5 to 12.3. And that's in an area where the zone standard since 1974, since Jim and I were in high school, the setback standards on these lots have been the same in town. So they've been there for a long time, 50 years. So with the change in lot coverage for substandard lots really dramatically reduces that and dramatically increases how much you can put on a substandard lot. And then you add 5% and 15% on top of that, it dramatically reduces the setbacks even further. So the second page, I did a similar thing with a 9,000 square foot lot in R20. And this sort of gets toward what Tom was talking about, where you have teeny lots in R80 or R20. And the setback standards are dramatically reduced. And already the town has no voice in that. That's the way it's done. And the lot coverage is dramatically increased. So on this 9,000 square foot lot, and lots like this might be in Bonnet Shores or some of the islands. So the old setback standard was 20% lot coverage. Now the lot coverage is 55%. So pretty dramatic changes on these substandard lots. Before, the second table there shows a 5% and 15% modification. So instead of 55%, it goes up to 63% lot coverage with a 15% modification on top of the change for substandard lots. So it's pretty dramatic. Previously, these sort of changes would have required a variance. Neighbors within 200 feet, the changes for modification, for the 15% modification. Neighbors within 200 feet of the proposed development would be notified of the proposal. The zoning board would have a public hearing where neighbors could express any concerns they had for the development process. And there are clear standards for approving or denying requests made for these changes. Changing the development standards for substandard lots eliminate any notification. There's no notification to neighbors. And there's no opportunity for expressing concerns or the ability of the town to say no. There's no discretion by the town. The second change, that raised red flags for our committee, the modifications. So it allows property owners to ask for 15% adjustment of development standards. And in essence, modifications are variants with reduced notification for neighbors and reduced standards for approval. Only the abutting property owners are notified, and property owners directly across the street. So if you have a lot directly across the street from that lot asking for the modification, they don't have a say in this. And as it's been discussed, abutters have, Jim, you read this, abutters have 2 weeks to object instead of 30-day notice for variance. And if there's no objection within 2 weeks, it's approved. So modifications nearly eliminate the town's ability to deny a request for variance up to 15% unless there's a clear negative impact on adjacent property. We believe that the standards for review and approval of modification are simply ask and you'll receive a modification. In the year and a half since modifications have been in place, every modification has been approved. None have been denied. What does this mean for neighbors? So when Doc and I were reviewing these changes in the red line, we were concerned about the reduced notification. In Narragansett, many property owners don't live in their property or spend months away in the winter. So a 2-week notification by letter, if they're in Florida for the winter, they might not get the letter in time to respond in 2 weeks to even object. So we were concerned about that. What does it mean about development. Yard setbacks can be reduced by requesting a modification on all sides of a house by 15%. So the house can be 30% wider, 15% on each side, and 30% deeper, and 15% higher. So instead of 35-foot high houses, the standard with a modification is over 40 feet. So we had those concerns when we were reviewing this. The mandated zoning changes for substandard lots and modifications both allowed development of larger houses on small lots. And in my professional opinion, and in the planning board's opinion at the time, in Narragansett, building bigger houses isn't going to help housing affordability. Instead, it will make houses more expensive. It's just the opposite to maintaining housing affordability for families year-round, which is a priority of the comprehensive plan. So when we were revising the zoning in fall of 2023, Narragansett had just spent many years developing the floor area ratio, FAR or bulk zoning, to manage the scale of houses on small lots. I believe that modifications would have huge impact and reverse the results that FAR was having on managing the scale of houses on small lots. And while the 15%'s been adopted, it's been a year, so how do the implications, the impact, we don't really know. We do know that FAR really was having an impact on the scale of houses on small lots and was having a result that was designed to have. And for substandard lots, as we talked about, modifications allowed for even larger houses because it's already dramatically reduced standards for substandard lots. So what does this mean for neighborhoods? It changes the character of neighborhoods that have many small lots, lot by lot, and the map up there shows those. Increases the size and cost of houses at a time when demographics, as we've talked about, we have seniors in town that are trying to stay in town. If you look at the state's housing plan the draft that was released about a month ago, they're talking about demographics in town looking for smaller houses, and you need smaller houses. So adding to bigger houses was contrary to the demographics that we were seeing, and demographics, sort of the trends that are discussed in the comprehensive plan. And really, we thought it was opposite the legislative goal of improving housing affordability and opposite to the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan that were adopted by the town council under Council President Susan Cicilline Bonanno in 2017 after years of work and community extensive outreach. The plan has extensive discussion about neighborhood character and goals and policies, and they include promote residential development that strengthens neighborhoods and reinforces community character. One's neighborhood character, tearing down small cottage homes and replacing them with large homes that dominate the landscape is a problem in some older neighborhoods. Support residential infill and expansion that's sensitive to its surroundings and does not negatively impact the neighborhood's character. And the plan also calls for supporting affordability of housing for families and year-round residents. So my concerns about the impact of the changes for substandard lots and modifications led me to suggest that we revise the town's development standards by 15% to accommodate the 15% modification and to mitigate some of the negative impact of reductions for substandard lots. And the idea is to maintain the town's core development standards that, like I said, have been in place for 50 years, since at least 1974. I think it may be before Doc O'Neill was even on the planning board. So when drafting the red line, I was told by legal counsel, our solicitor at the time, that the changes the planning board was proposing for the development standards had to be in a separate ordinance from the changes mandated by the state legislation, and the town's planning staff could not be involved with the changes being recommended by the planning board. So just to be clear on the record, because there's some misinformation being circulated about this, Mike DeLuca and Jill Sabo had nothing to do with the 15% changes in dimensional standards for Narragansett zoning. I initiated that proposal, drafted the red line when working with Doc on the subcommittee. And the development standards are scattered throughout the zoning ordinance. It's they're all over the place. So it was an interesting project to do. And then the town ordinances have a really awkward format. It's quite a project drafting a proposed town ordinance with development standards changing by 15%. At the time we did this, we didn't have data to know what percent of building permits were impacted by development standards and needed a variance or special use permit. We didn't have time to evaluate which standards should be changed by 15% and which didn't need to, because the impact on them, on the neighborhood, time to dig into the data in the zoning office to say, okay, what's coming in for variances? Where's the big rub here, and what are the impacts? We now know some of the data. As Mark talked about, very few of the building permit applications are impacted by development standards and need a variance or special use permit. Over the past 5 years, and this is data from Wayne's shop, less than 4% of the building permit application asked for a variance or needed a special use permit. Over 5 years, less than 4%. So that's like 96% are being approved by staff without going through any planning or zoning boards. And since nearly half of Narragansett's lots are substandard, I think it's reasonable to assume that most of those requests won't be necessary with the revised standards for substandard lots. I think there'll be very, very few applications for variances over the 15% managed as modifications. And the comments about, Jim, you mentioned that we made a point that when we sent the recommendations to town council, we made a point that both planning and zoning staff were going to need to be increased. And the reason is it shifted the burdens. So modifications, if you apply for a variance, the responsibility of notifying the neighbors within 200 feet falls to the person asking for the variance. With modifications, that notification request got shifted to town hall, so it became a project. Same with so many things changed in the zoning and subdivision regulations that stuff that was going through a routine process now is being handled by staff. So regardless of whether you change these 15% or don't change these 50%, both planning staff and zoning staff have a higher workload because of the changes that were made at the state level. So when we sent this to the town council for recommendations, we recommended that after a year of working with the 15% in modifications, that we review the 15% standards like was done with FAR and was done with FAR and bulk zoning. It seems like that would be prudent to do before making changes to the development standards. And we just really have circled a year, and so much discussion has been going on that it didn't make sense for the planning board to turn around and say, let's look at how this 15% is working, because it's only been a year and there's so much discussion about changing it. It seemed that the discussion's going on at your level instead of at our level. So.
It might not be a bad thing to do, though, right?
I
think a year is more than enough time to at least get some data.
It was already at your level, and the discussions are town-wide now. It made no sense, in our opinion, to usurp that from you. It was to wait until it comes to the table.
Sure.
And then have these discussions.
That makes sense.
And then have the review.
Sorry,
It was
Bert.
more
So
of
no,
respect.
that's okay. I just wanted to, that's the history. Doc and I were on the front lines. I drafted this. It was initiated by me. It didn't come from Joe. It didn't come from Mike. And literally our solicitor at the time for the planning board made it very clear that it had to be a separate ordinance, and it had to be that they couldn't be involved in drafting it. So
Well, really,
that's the history of it.
Really, really, really appreciate the amount of effort that went into the development of that and the context that you provided.
In a short time frame for doing it. I mean, if we had the time to sit down with Wayne and look at building permits and figure out where it would make sense to do the 15%, where it didn't, but also on top of the substandard lots, it would be really hard to figure out because I don't think there's a track record of what's going on with substandard lots. That's brand new too, so.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, I mean, at this point, you think there is a need to review that 15%. Because what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing is
Yes.
there was no data, so this was an arbitrary decision, and there was no data to support what you were trying to do. You just did it to be able to look at a year to see how the data was going to play out. Is that what I was hearing?
It wasn't an arbitrary decision. The modifications were mandated at 15%. We thought that the modifications in Narragansett were going to have a negative impact on affordable housing and a negative impact on the
Right, but
ordinance.
there was no
just
data
passed.
supporting
There
that.
was-
No, that
there
was just
wasn't.
your thought process. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And just as a question, and I don't know if Jill or Wayne would be the one to provide the answer. Based on the 15% rollback, how many properties, again, we have ages of properties all over the place. And again, just in the north end alone, we're looking at 50s, 60s, 70s. How many, as a result of the 15% rollback, were just automatically out of compliance, just by existing?
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by out of compliance.
So basically, if they want to do, again, challenge me, again, it's in order to be able to develop anything on their property, due to the age of their house and the standards that were different when they were developed, I'm sharing feedback, again, that I've heard, and maybe it's just misinformation, so that's why I'm here, that as a result of the 15% that rolled back, that there were houses that were already out of compliance if they wanted to develop anything.
So I think it's important to first say that anyone can ask for a variance.
Sure.
No one has ever told no.
Sure.
It's just a matter of whether or not you need relief. Section 9.1 of the ordinance refers specifically to dimensionally non-conforming structures, and I could pull it up and read it if you like. But,
Oh, that's all right.
okay, but basically it says that a non-conforming, it refers to it as a dimensionally non-conforming structure, can seek any building permit as long as it doesn't make that non-conforming component more non-conforming.
Perfect. Really appreciate it. And obviously, this is stuff for me to go back and
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
look. So I appreciate the direction. And just in regards to just some of the feedback in regards to the setbacks in general, I will express my own personal opinion on the height. I have no desire to be building 40-foot structures. I will never support that entity of going upward, at the very least. I don't think anyone wants these large hotels on small lots. I certainly don't. I don't know what a revised table, if it does get proposed, what that looks like. I appreciate the feedback of looking at the 15% and seeing, has it worked, has it not, where can we improve? I think there's been a lot of really strong feedback from the planning board and great questions asked from the council. And I do want to just be mindful that there are two other additional large topics, so I just want to make sure. And again, just as a reminder, we did get a series of questions submitted, and we can go through the questions pertaining to this topic now, or do you guys want to just address those questions at the end?
Mr. Chair, I
Sure.
would like Steve to have the opportunity to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We value what he has to say. He's been a key
Thank you.
contributor to the board.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rupert.
After
Sorry,
I thought I made my way down,
I stole your
you guys are
wallet,
both
too.
wearing blue. You're throwing
I
me
did, I
off.
reached for the,
Sorry.
no, I had,
Thank you.
I knocked you out.
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, yeah. I just wanted to say, Rupert, great work. I totally understand why you did the whole 15%, because it was a knee-jerk reaction to the state. I understand that. Obviously, you were concerned about what could happen. People go rampant. I get it. I did want to reiterate that the 5 and 15% modification, neither are by right. They go through our zoning official. It's well within his purview to say 40 feet is too tall, 36 feet is too tall. We're not going to do that. That's well within his same with the side yard setbacks. He's a big boy, he can say, that's too close, we're not going to allow that. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that that was not by right, that has to go through the zoning official. Now, you're right that they've all been approved thus far, but you did roll back it by 15%, so all the ones that were approved were less than 15% or less, so they are in compliance with what was previous to 2023. So of course they'd be approved. It was in full compliance with the previous regulation. And I wanted to drill down on what some of our council people were saying. Obviously, this can't be reflected in the data because it's anecdotal. They've talked to families who have not applied for variances because they don't understand that you can apply for a variance. It's very confusing. I've spoken to families who have chosen not to apply for variances because it's too expensive or it's too confusing. So that's another unforeseen consequence of this. And I had one other thing, but it's escaping me. It's escaping me.
You have a right. Do you sleep anymore?
No.
He just had a baby.
No, I don't.
Well, what Donna does is she throws up her finger so she doesn't forget something. So, if it comes, I don't want to interrupt, but
Sorry, I lost it.
Nope, that's all
It'll
right.
be back.
We're here for a while.
So I'd like to, I know you don't want to hear, I know you're not interested in my voice, and I apologize.
no, absolutely.
I agree with
That
If
is
I
not
can-
what the
if I can
intention was.
Address, Donna, I think excellent questions as to why. And I'm not going to get into a ton of statistics and stuff. The intent was to allow growth, the intent was to allow growth, but still try to keep the characteristic. I once sat in a courtroom, sworn in on behalf of a client, and stated, for the record, that my client has the right to do with his land which he wishes. To which I got slapped hard by a judge who stated, you have the right, but you have the legal responsibility to make sure that the abutters and your neighbors can enjoy the full value of their homes. So it was an attempt to balance those things. Allow for growth and still allow for the character of, and that's what I was talking about, what's your goal? The
Can you
character-
just define growth, just
Allow
again,
people to
for
build-
me to
build
understand
and
what
ex-
you're talking about?
people to expand their homes or knock them down and rebuild them. And so
Okay.
if you
Thank
looked at the strictest part of this, and let's look at worst case scenario, you could get a 3,100 square foot house. So that's 3-4 bedrooms comfortable. I mean, if you wanted to jam something in, you could do a fifth, but that's ridiculous. So you can get about a 3,100 square foot. You can get 4 rooms. So the idea was that a family could have a master suite, could have rooms for kids, et cetera. The other part of it was to try to do whatever, and we're all grasping at this, because right now, I think we all have more questions than solutions, is the escalating cost of homes and the widening gap between attainable and market rate. Even with all these regulations, we're at $841,000 for a home here. That's the average. And it's raising at 10% this year, which is, the market has softened throughout the country. What I asked to council also consider, which we don't have any numbers for, is you undertook, and it's legally not compliant, but it was towards your goal of trying to allow families to grow and hopefully do something affordable or attainable, was you eliminated sellers. Stated originally in the legislation, eliminated basements, but not sellers. And Councilor Durkin and I talked about this. That one thing would permit 900 to 1,000 square foot of living space, and I got that from the building department. So that's an ADU. So now instead of 3 or 4 bedrooms, affordable dwelling unit, which is a whole nother bailiwick, but it's a separate building where people can live in that, so families can make accommodations for people. Thank you, I'm sorry, the jargon. So you add that 900 to 1,000, And now you've got a 4,000 to 4,100 square foot house. Now you've got comfortably 4 to 6 bedrooms. So before we throw the baby out with the bathwater, I'm always a conservative. I like to walk before we run. Consider the fact that we have no data yet, but we're going to add 1,000 square foot. That's your third floor. If that's just bedrooms, it's easily 3, maybe 4 bedrooms, depending how, or ensuite or whatever. Would allow a family of 3 children, easily a master suite, 3 bedrooms, and a guest bedroom, and probably an office. On a 10,000 square foot lot, folks. I live in the North End. I modified my home, Chair Mensa, you were there. Think about my lot, and now you have a three-story, 4,100 square foot house on that lot. That's dramatic. That's impactful. So consider, if you want, okay, do we just look at that, give it 6 to 8 months, and see if it does attain? Because here's the fears, and I was jotting these down because, Donna, your words are in my ears, and I was trying to verbalize how everybody here is thinking. The concerns are this: the escalation of housing costs that are already beyond our reach. I feel for you because I have 3 boys. My son lives in Boston with his girlfriend. They pay $3,200 a month for a little 2-bedroom apartment. They can afford a mortgage. They can't afford to save for a down payment. And we can't afford to give them the money. So I feel, and I feel for everybody here. So we're concerned about that swing back where you've got, build to the lot lines, whatever, 6, 8-bedroom house, whatever you want, but increasing that escalation in the cost of housing here, which is already beyond the reach of 99% of us. Widening the gap between the market value and even attainable, because market really, and I get angry about this. We always put the burden on property owners and builders that they should take care of the affordable. They didn't cause the problem. This isn't their problem. The state comes out, and I face this in Massachusetts, well, 10% of your housing stock. Well, our housing started in 1600s. Why should we be responsible for stuff happened in 1600s? It should look maybe incrementally going forward. But you cannot ask somebody to pay $500,000, and I respect Dr. Durkin, Councilor Durkin's knowledge base beyond anybody else in this room. $500,000, and then you've got to put a property on top of that, and then going to sell it at a loss? Why? We can't ask that. There have to be other things. But the widening gap between market, looking at squeezing out our seniors as the cost of these houses go up. They don't have the financial wherewithal to even keep up with their rising taxes, let alone maintain their homes in the marketplace that it's in. Squeezing out families, reducing children because they can't afford $840,000 for a home. Reducing monies to our education from cities and towns because the state of Rhode Island, for whatever reason, bases distribution of monies to cities and towns for education, and you both can correct me, based on the value of homes, not on income. Everybody else in the world does income.
It's a terrible,
so the higher
terrible
the price,
funding formula.
The higher the prices of our homes, the less money we're going to get in education.
Yep.
So the other thing is already a taxed infrastructure, which is another bailiwhack, and just going from lot line to lot line on large dwellings, we had a concern with fire and safety. And I will tell you, our setbacks for fire and safety do not comply with state law.
I'll thank you for reminding
They
me
don't.
of that.
But we believe that the safety and well-being of not only the people in this community, but our firefighters and our police and our ambulance people to get in between buildings in a critical situation is key. And we cherish that, and we hope you value that. But these were the goals. Now, whether they were attained or not is another question. But keep in mind that you folks went forward and really took a chance here and changed state law to the benefit of this community and said, we're taking out cellars also. So that's 900 to 1,000 square foot of livable building space for families throughout this whole town. Do we take a look, and Donna, as you said, do we develop some data to see where it goes? Get feedback from Wayne, because in our hearings, Wayne said that this was the biggest issue that with people coming in. They use the square footage of their basement or their cellar. Do we take a step? And this is not us telling you. This is you, policy-wise, you have to decide what you want to do. This is why you get the big bucks, and we get to go home at night.
We don't get paid anything.
Neither, I know.
Just to clear that up.
Just so everybody knows, this was, and it's disseminated throughout this board, and I'm extremely proud of this board and the expertise that is honed in this board. But this was the idea. It was not to put a burden in. Based on building inspectors' data, 94% of the 352 proposals that came into them last year, 94% they handled and approved. 6% were referred to us, only 3 were denied. So there's a deficiency. I've talked to the staff about creating a technical board so that we can get sheds, decks, driveways. So they're not even in the pipeline, that they can be done administratively, and that I'm hoping to do before my term is expired here. But think about this policy-wise. You've already added 900 to 1,000 square foot. You're already looking at a market that is a runaway train, but do we want to exasperate that, or do we want to take a little bit of time and say, all right, let's visit this in 6 or 8 months, get Wayne, look at the stats, where are we at? And get feedback from the neighborhoods as to, hey, all we're getting is, 5-bedroom, 3-story, I don't even recognize I can't even see the sun anymore type things. And that's anecdotal, but that's really where all of this came from. It's really the intent of all of it. And so we leave you with that information.
So, can I ask?
Yeah, no, again, and yes, I just want to reiterate our thanks for this. I think this has been a tremendous dialogue and the feedback required here. And I will allow any council members, as I saw Donna put up a couple fingers.
Are we done?
No, we're going on here, but I do want to be mindful of time that there are still 2 topics of conversation to address, and this is all educational.
So, Mark, is it okay if I ask one?
Yeah, go ahead. Just talk in the mic.
Sorry, I got comfortable there. So, why do you say the word lot line to lot line? Like, why do you say that? Because none of the provisions in anything I read, you cannot build close to the lot line.
First of all, it's a figure of speech. With all due respect, you seem to try to find something at fault at everything I said. What I'm saying is we're adding another 900 to 1,000 square foot to homes that can, on a 10,000 square foot, are already, if you take the strictest, is already at 3,100 square foot. So you have a choice. You can eliminate the 15% on top of the cellars and see where things go. You could take an interim step and say, all right, let's see where the sellers take us. Do they do what we need them to do? Do they achieve what we want? If they don't, then take a look at the 15%. Maybe you don't need to go 15%, maybe you know to go 10. Whatever it is, the data will be there. Wayne will be able to give you the data because at this point in time, he's going to keep track. I know Wayne. He's going to keep meticulous track of it. Yep. And then we all have a benchmark and a foundation to deal with. So those are really the choices, and that's all we're giving you is advice of choices, and it's your decision to make the policies one way or another. And they're not right or wrong, they're policies. And whatever you do, that's what we enforce.
But I think it's important that we have this discussion because you guys are going to go back and think about what we discussed, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're going to do, right? So, how many sellers do you think there are? Because there isn't, I mean, I mean, maybe 5% of people have cellars in Point Judith because it's so wet. They
See,
don't have
I
cellars.
don't even know.
Well-
You know, my neighborhood, a lot of people have cellars, but some don't. I have a cellar.
You do.
You know, so it,
Jason, do you have a cellar?
I'm a slab.
A slab?
yeah, so,
So then, if you have a slab.
Yep.
Or a crawl space.
right,
I mean, everybody that built houses down here built crawl spaces because they didn't have the money.
Yeah.
They built these burger houses that were for sale.
mine's a burger house.
Yeah. And they were very unusual to have full basements because of the water table. So somehow you've gotten rid of your water or you got a damp basement. But should it be used for square footage? Probably not, right?
No, but the square footage is now above ground, it's living space.
Right, but you don't have living space in your
No,
basement, right?
but now I could take my home, which I'm not going to, it's fine.
Yeah.
We got about 1,600 square feet, and
Yeah.
that's more than enough for us. But now I could take that up to 2,600 square foot, because you eliminated basements and cellars. So Wayne would have to tell you the data on that. I don't think either one of us really know, we're just
Well,
guessing.
did you
But-
have FAR in your calculations?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
put your addition on?
Yeah, yep. So the thing is, you have two choices. You can just eliminate, you know, whatever you want. You don't even have to eliminate the 15. You can reduce the 15 to whatever figure that you feel meets the needs of what we outlined here. Affordable housing, keeping families in, seniors, those types of things. But do keep in mind, you already have adjusted by doing cellars. That adds 900 to 1,000 square feet. So, you know, those are your choices. And we're just laying out those options. But we do want you to know that this present situation, maybe for some families, and I'm not even saying maybe, I'm sure for some families, I think the whole process, regardless of how simple we try to make it, is arduous, and people are nervous because it's the government. And that's an education thing. I don't know how we do that yet. But the idea was to allow growth, keep the character that is Narragansett, whatever that vision is. Try to keep the market as slowly as possible escalation, and reduce that widening gap from attainable to market value, and all the goals that you had set. That's what this was about. So, you know, we would be revisiting it anyway. The reason why we didn't, we're deferring to you, because we knew this was on your agenda, it was going to come up, so it just didn't seem respectful at all for us to say, well, who cares about them, let's do it. We want direction from you, and when it comes from you back to us, then we can do it and look at it and say, okay, you know, here's what we recommend, here's what we're not, and then you take our recommendations or not, whichever way you want.
That's great feedback.
If I can break in with a brainstorm toward Donna's idea of, you know, what are suggestions, what can we do to maybe get toward the goals that I think we all agree with. Jim talked about the modifications is enabled up to 25%. I think this year maybe it went to 30%.
Yeah, I think so. No,
That didn't pass, okay, so it's 25%.
Phew.
But 25% on each side, that's 50% to a house.
When you talk about how small the lots are in this town.
So it's enabled to 25%. It's required to 15%. What if we say between 15 and 25%, you can have a modification if you're doing affordable?
Well, what if I was thinking about this, Rupert.
Thank you.
I talked to Alex about this, and what if that whole theory you were just talking about, because you guys are afraid of third floor houses, like tall houses. I think people are building tall houses because you guys, you know, pushed.
You keep saying you guys,
Well,
it's not us guys.
And that we're afraid.
These standards were written at least in
No,
1974.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
you added the 15% to people, you know, like.
We moved things back 15% because you get a 15% modification pretty much by asking.
I think what's
But
happened
if your
here-
neighbor said you can't get it, then you don't get it.
No, that's not true.
That's not
No,
true.
yes, it is true.
No, it's not. And I think we're trying to play blame
I
games
just wanted-
here,
yeah, I
and that
wanted to
takes us
stand
way
up.
back to the beginning, and that's not what I want.
So-
I did write down in one of my notes is just
Can I
that.
clarify
The-
Jim's question? So if the neighbor objects, and it has to be a neighbor, it
Yeah.
can't be across the street,
No.
then it goes to the zoning board for the
Right,
variance
right,
process.
right.
It doesn't mean you get turned down.
Yeah, right,
And
right,
the standard for modification is pretty
Pretty simple.
hard to say no.
Yeah.
So I would like to just thank you for at least looking at a way
Yes.
that we could possibly compromise and come to some kind of ideas. And that, I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking
Yes.
for your ideas and what could we look at and what possibilities are out there. So I do appreciate that. But if I could just make two
Oh, yeah, but go
quick
ahead.
points. I have my two
And then I
fingers up
want to.
before I forget.
I
and then
do
you
want to
can-
recess
you end
for
this.
a
That's
quick
fine.
5-minute break.
Just two clarifications, actually, what's a clarification? And so I just, in regards to what Jim just said, I mean, as a senior citizen, I know I live in a house that's 3 floors, and I go up and down those stairs, and I think as far as squeezing seniors out, I don't think I think what we need to do is we need to allow them to make a house so that they can have a 1-story house, because people cannot, when you're older, go up and down these stairs all the time, whether it's going down to the basement or going up to a floor. So I think to say that we're squeezing seniors out was not really a fair statement, because as a senior citizen, I can tell you, I would love an all 1-floor home. The other thing that I wanted to just clarify, and I think you said about safety, and I know that that Jill provided information to a memo, and it was dated 2015. I did take the opportunity, and I believe Mr. Durkin did, but I did meet with the fire marshal, and what I was told, and I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I'm just going to talk about my recollection of how it went down, but because I know I went home thinking very confidently that the people and the residents of Narragansett, we have second to none the best fire department here in the state of Rhode Island, but he assured me that they purchased that truck with a 100-foot ladder, and there is absolutely nowhere that they cannot get to. And so when I talked to him about the side yards and the ladders and all of that, and he said that we pull a truck up and we shoot our ladder up there. He said, so, I said, look, I want to be able to go home, put my head on the pillow at night, knowing that the residents of Narragansett are safe. And he assured me that everybody is safe and that is not a law. It is a recommendation.
Right.
And so I just wanted to clarify that. And so I don't know if it changed since when Jill did submit that memo, and at the time that might have been, and I don't know when they bought the fire truck. I don't know any of that. But I just wanted to just tell you that was the discussion that I had. And so I just wanted to clarify that I don't believe it's a safety hazard.
Okay, so it was never a law, and I stated it wasn't a law. It
thought
was
you
just
said it
something
was
we
a
did.
law.
No,
Okay.
I did not. It's just something we did, and that position on the fire marshal is changed from last time I
And it very
talked to
well
him.
may be. That's why I wanted to bring it to your
One of the
attention.
things that Rupert did say, and I wrote it down here, was one of our most valuable tools, I think, that we can really use in negotiating affordable is our ordinances and giving relief to builders. I think Steve can tell you, no matter where you build, there are ordinances, and some of them are onerous and some of them are not. But you're still running into things that frustrate you as a builder, but also add cost. And if you can get some incentives on things, and there's a myriad of tools in the bag, and I don't want to get into that now because I think it's a separate meeting, but I think those things, including setbacks and height and densities and all of that, are tools that some builders might find valuable in looking at saying, okay, if I can do this, then that makes sense to me. And I'm not putting words in, I don't have any commitment from builders or anything, but I think in my mind, that's just a tool, a possible tool in attaining, as Donna said, what can we do? It's frustrating because you think about everything and it's like, does it make sense? So.
Yeah, and just to again echo, any decision or if anything comes out of the conversations tonight is that we all are united that safety and the well-being of all residents in Narragansett. It remains the #1 priority, always. With that being said, go ahead. Go ahead, and then I know some people have been holding it in.
I'm sorry, I know everybody's tired of me. I just wanted to sneak in. I would love to work on something to encourage affordable housing with Mr. Brady. I've talked to him about it before.
Yeah, we have.
I would love to see that. I did remember my question from earlier, though, and it's for Rupert. Do you actually have any numbers on how many applications died on the vine, thereby they weren't approved or denied? Because you can't ask for a variance if you don't get a denial.
No, I was the one that developed those stats.
Okay,
and-
do you have any numbers on it, please?
No,
Mark?
what I got was applications that came in.
Okay.
And then how many were approved, what percent were approved, the 3 that were denied, and the 6% that went to us.
Okay, so I can take a look at that and do the math, and I'll figure out how many just
Yep.
languish. Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you. And with that, again, really appreciate the dialogue, and maybe I'll get to this side of the table a little bit more, Ryan and Jason. So with that, we'll take a quick 5-minute recess, and we'll pick up here then. Thank you. Mr. Durkin, please return to your seat.
We're talking movies. If you guys want to go to a fun roller coaster ride of a movie, F1 with Brad Pitt. The story is actually the story is actually pretty good. It's a good story.
Oh, it's the highest rated
But it is just
movie,
a roller coaster.
highest rated reviewed movie, I believe.
Is it really?
That's a fun fact about Brad Pitt. If there's anything that we walk away from here knowing, that movie in reference is the highest rated. So thank you, everyone. I think we're beyond the halfway point, but just as a reminder, at the end of these discussions, there is a series of questions that were submitted to us that we will address and make sure that we answer to the best of our abilities. And with that, the next item on the agenda was the discussion. Where is my sheet? I just had 100 things in front of me. It's the 1 per bedroom up to 5. Who has the printout of this agenda? 1 second.
Did we already do the one?
Yep, we're going to address that, Jim. Just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. I do not know what happened to it.
On the agenda?
Yeah. So it's addressing the ordinance of the 1 per bedroom up to 5 and what is on the books at the state and what our current ordinances say. And Ms. Sabo was very gracious to share a reminder that in Chapter 1137, an ordinance and amendment of Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, the definition of household stipulates 1 or more persons living together in a single dwelling unit with common access to and common use of all living and eating areas and all areas and facilities for the preparation and storage of food within the dwelling unit. And then we continue down to B, and it defines a person or group of unrelated persons living together. This maximum shall be 1 person per bedroom and shall not exceed 5 unrelated persons per dwelling. The maximum number shall not apply to Narragansett certified recovery residences. So just based on what's been shared here, and I just want to look to Nick and James on this, is that it sounds like this particular ordinance has already been addressed, it's been codified, it's in our ordinances, and this was approved at our June
20th and
20th.
21st, you guys approved it.
Yeah. So does anyone on the council have any comments or questions on that, or is that sufficient?
Sufficient.
Okay. So moving on, I think that I will allow anyone on the planning board if you have any comments on that before moving forward.
So my suggestion is we add the word legal in front of bedroom.
In front of?
Legal
legal
bedroom.
bedroom.
Because there's an awful lot of bedrooms in town that aren't legal. And the planning board, since January, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 houses have come in to make illegal bedrooms legal. So.
Legal bedrooms. Yep, nope, that's good. Thank you.
And
sorry, go ahead.
just so you know, those are people who purchased the house thinking it was one thing, finding out it was another thing, and coming in and asking, hey, and we granted those.
Thank you. And this was already approved and vetted and reviewed a few times, I think, by the planning board on a number of occasions. So
Yeah, and you guys approved this definition back in June 20th or 21st, I think.
thank you. And I do ask or make a request that any planning board members, I don't know if the next process is for you to all collectively provide us with recommendations based on this discussion, or if you individually want to, because I've really appreciated a lot of the suggestions and feedback that we've gotten, just if we can figure out a way to capture some of that?
We don't operate individually, so they would come
Okay.
through the chair to the staff.
Okay.
And then through the staff to you.
Thank you.
That's our procedure.
Appreciate it. And then, so we're on to item number 3, and then we'll move on to the questions that were submitted, and that is in regards to coastal overlays and wetlands. And I wonder if we can just get that language up on the screen, please.
I'm going to turn this to staff, if they would.
Oh, yeah. Ms. Sabo, I assume. Unless anyone on the council has any specific questions related to coastal wetlands and overlays.
I don't think, that's automatic state.
Right. So, well, let's talk into it. And
No, I don't have any questions on that, I don't think.
well, so again, I think from at least my perspective, and what I'm trying to wrap my head around, is we have the legal text that's stipulated as state law, and we're getting a recommendation from our solicitors, and I'm wondering if our solicitors could share in their interpretation of where our current ordinances are different from state law, if they are. And again, I understand it's already been shared that we're in compliance, but is there a gap in which we could be a little bit more compliant to avoid litigation? So again, I just want to make sure that, if any.
So this issue hasn't come up in litigation. I don't know
Okay.
if it, yeah, I don't know if it will come up in litigation. But before you is the change to state law. We have subsection B, subsection C. Subsection B relates to new ordinances a city or town council may pass in the future. Upon the effective date of this section, a city or town shall no longer be authorized. So that's going forward. C relates to ordinances that are existing on your books. And C, as you can see, states, cities, and towns shall be prohibited from applying the requirements in existing zoning ordinances pertaining to both wetland buffers and OWTS, on-site wastewater treatment systems, setbacks. So I haven't, and again, this is new state law, so I haven't seen litigation. It's not in town, not elsewhere on these issues. But we received, I guess we can call it guidance from the state, or the state has spoken in this area, that new laws would have to comply with B, and your existing laws have to comply with C. So to the extent, speaking to existing laws, to the extent that your existing zoning ordinances pertain to wetland buffers, the state's spoken in that regard. So this is kind of a nuanced subject matter. I think we'll have less of a discussion on this than we did the modifications. But I don't know that we're not in compliance, or to the extent it is, it's arguable. So I think this is lower level than your modification issue.
Oh, I agree. And I just, that's why we're doing this third. And I appreciate that feedback and that interpretation. Mr. DeSimone, I wonder, in our previous conversations, this going back many months now, you brought a concern up to us in regards to this topic. So I'm just wondering if you have any sound bites or any experience with this particular ordinance?
So my concern with this ordinance is that we have an unenforceable ordinance, that we're still requiring people to come and request variances from us due to wetland setbacks, which are now in line with the state setbacks. The issue is they spend months at planning and zoning, and then at the end, we're not allowed to say no anyway, so we have to say yes, pending approval from the state entities, because as everybody knows, CRMC gets the last bite of the apple, as Jill likes to say. And so if we're holding people up here and we don't have a wetland biologist and we don't have an engineer in an effort to improve their plan, my argument would be that the property owner, applicant, engineer, wetland biologist would know better than us. And then they go to the state, which is the sole regulatory body of wetland setbacks and buffers, both coastal and freshwater. So it seems to be an extra 2 steps that every property owner who is impacted by this has to go through and hear our opinion, which they may or may not want. If they want it, I'm sure they could come and ask. But if they don't want it, I don't think they need to ask it. They can just go to the state and request the relief that is required there. So
Can I
that's
just
my
ask a
concern.
clarifying question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if, and again, procedurally, just trying to understand, because I think this is very interesting, and I want to make sure that I care very deeply about protecting our environment and natural resources around town. I mean, again, the beach and the beauty that we have in our town is the reason why, what draws in, I think, so many of us here. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not coming across as not supportive of protecting our natural resources and access to our oceans and everything along those lines, which we truly value.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I don't think that you need to go as far as some people think you need to go. Like, you could leave the wetland overlay district as an informative, non-binding thing. It's just the setbacks that we're not enforcing because we can't, but we're requiring people to come before us and ask for variances from them, even though we can't deny those variances. It seems like we shouldn't be doing that.
I'd like staff to step in on this, please.
Thank you.
Mr. President, yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So up here, you see the 2 definitions of buffer and setback, which both refer to freshwater wetlands. We did actually, so just to take us in the Wayback Machine for 1 minute here, the state changed the law in 2015 and then took approximately 7 years to promulgate their rules. And they did in July of 2022. And they gave the municipalities, you can see under there, under RIGL 2-1-20.1, 18 months. We actually changed our rules within 12 months from 2022 to 2023, and we did exactly what Mr. DeSimone is referring to. We removed the requirement for a special use permit for freshwater wetlands, and we added a section referred to as special review uses. So if you have your 14th Amendment book open, you'll find that under Chapter 1108, where we actually added that. We no longer require a special use permit for freshwater wetlands, but we do use the overlay district to, A, either inform people that they're in one of the jurisdictional areas, whether that be DEM or CRMC. CRMC does have jurisdiction over freshwater wetlands in the vicinity of the coast, in the entire north end, and all of the perimeter of the south end. The other thing we use that for is to let folks know if they need to go to CRMC or DEM for some type of permit prior to coming to the town to be able to pull a building permit.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just for clarification. So we've already had one application before us since I've joined the planning board, where one of the variances they were asking for was relief from the coastal setback.
Right, so the
Which we
coastal.
can't deny them.
So I just want to be clear that section 4.3 refers to coastal and freshwater wetlands. Coastal wetlands and coastal features are still regulated. They have not been removed from the state law. And I can't speak to which application you're referring to, Mr. DeSimone, but I can't recall a single one we've had in the last 8 months that was 4.3. It may have been 4.4, which is coastal features, so that could be bluffs, dunes, retaining, riprap. It could be a variety of things, which is not referenced in the state law changes from 2015.
So it was on Harbor Island. It was at the north end of Harbor Island.
It was likely a 4.4 coastal feature.
Yeah. Okay. So, but when I asked you when we were there if we could deny them, the answer was not really, because they have to go to CRMC.
I wouldn't offer anything like that. I'm not the
I'm
planning or
sorry,
zoning
maybe I
board.
asked Nick, sorry, or I asked the zoning, I can't remember who I asked, but it seems apparent that our setbacks can't be enforced, because if CRMC grants them a variance to the setback, they supersede our power.
As you pointed out,
Is that right?
CRMC does take the last bite of the apple. If for some reason the application has been denied, and there are standards for section 4.4 still within our ordinance, the application would never go to CRMC. I can only think of one instance in the last 13 years where an application, actually 2, but that one was later approved, but one application in the last 13 years where it has been denied based on a coastal feature. And we don't need to get into the particulars of it, but the zoning board at that time found that the application did not meet the standards of section 4.4 or the standards for a variance.
Okay. Yeah, that's my concern, is that someone could be denied before they get their chance to go before wetland biologists and engineers who are charged by the state to protect the wetlands, because we've denied them.
Sure, in this particular application, they were denied the variance. They weren't denied necessarily on the section 4.4. In that particular variance that I'm thinking of.
I was going to ask just a follow-up question to that, but if you
Go
want
ahead.
to. I saw your red light on.
No, I'm just,
So I was just wondering, in general, just from your guys' experience, when it comes up for a review like this, and knowing that there's these many nuances of the biologist, wetland biologist, engineer, that would still need to review at the state level, do you guys still approve everything and it still goes to the state? Or, and in your experience of your years of review, do you usually just let things, I mean, I shouldn't say let things, I know you guys very thoroughly review everything. I just want to, in your experience, have you traditionally approved most of these requests that have come through so that it then goes up to the state for their decision-making?
Yeah, do you have, I don't have numbers on it, but I mean,
Just
I wasn't looking for any specific numbers, just in general.
just real quick, again, there might be a circumstance, rare,
right.
where the recommendation to the zoning board is to deny. It is ultimately the zoning board that makes the decision to deny or not.
Okay, thank you.
In addition,
If I could jump in, I think we're confusing the two overlay
I
districts.
was about to say.
The wetland
Oh, thank
overlay
you.
district is one, and the coastal overlay district is the second. The coastal overlay district is not it's not tied to the wetlands, and there's provisions on it that are, for example, proposed project will not interfere with public access, use, or enjoyment of tidal waters and shorelines. So it's public access. It's natural diversity, habitat. It's things not related to wetlands. So I think we're confusing the two. But back to the wetlands, when you go back to the modifications, one of the standards for modification is that the modification request does not violate any rules or regulations with respect to freshwater or coastal wetlands. So I think just that's part of the modification language. They've been revising that the last 3 or 4 years. So I think if they didn't want that there, they would have taken it out. And that's the state enabling code. So I think even at that level, they see the town as having some role in looking at wetlands if we're looking at modifications and if they're impacting wetlands. So.
Excuse me, can you just read that part one more time?
Yeah, so this is under modifications. Jim read this earlier. Basically, they can't approve a requested modification if the modification requested does not violate any rules or regulations with respect to freshwater or coastal wetlands. So that's modification approval is a town planning and zoning authority. It's done by Wayne. And that language specifically speaks to the wetland regulations. So.
If I may, Mr. Friday, that makes perfect sense because they took our ability to regulate the wetlands. So why would they allow us to make modifications to the wetlands? We can't. We don't have the authority over wetlands and setbacks and buffers. So of course they put that language in there because we can't grant modifications to wetland setbacks and buffers. We can't regulate them.
But we can't look at them. It's saying you have to look at it.
It's saying we can't look at it.
Not this.
That's what it says.
It says you have to look at it.
says modifications requested cannot violate the rules with respect to freshwater or coastal wetlands, which means that our zoning official cannot look at modifications to setbacks to wetlands. That's what it says.
Well,
Can I
there's,
get counsel in here? We're not lawyers. Can a lawyer tell me if I'm right or not?
exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I will appreciate that, actually. Because actually, I actually hear a different viewpoint as well, and it's probably different from both of you.
So here's the thing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
You
Mr. Brady. I
I'm
just
sorry.
want to wait to answer this question from the solicitors first. Sorry, Mr. Brady.
Let me look up the modification language specifically. I'm
All right.
listening to it, but I'm not reading it. Let me.
No, that's all right. I appreciate it.
So
Go ahead.
So you can find an incident to make any argument you want. You can find one
Of course.
incident out of 1,000. One of the frustrating things about this is that CRMC now has overview of wetlands. They require that it be a buildable project before it goes to them. Ask backwards. So that means the applicant has to come to us and we give recommendations, and that goes to zoning. They have to then go to CRMC and say, okay, now you can look at our wetlands because we got the green light to build. We don't know what to make recommendations on unless they have some sort of delineated wetlands to us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, they can come to us and put into the wetlands anything they want, and then go to CRMC, and CRMC says, no, you can't build this. So they have to come to us with some sort of delineation. So it is a convoluted, frustrating process for everyone. We try to make it as painless and easy as we can for the applicant. We look at it as an advisory role. We look at it as, hey, we're here for you as a resource to help you. Here's some of the things that we're going to see. And those are usually in our recommendations. If they are conditions, it is usually predicated on that. But again, you can find a single case out of 1,000 to justify an action. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But the reality is, this is a frustrating law. I mean, at one point in time, we understood what wetlands did, and we are dependent on fresh drinking water. And wetlands and coastal features and environmental features were important. They're becoming less and less important as time goes on, which is unfortunate. But the reality is we're stuck in having a responsibility with no authority. How's that? So we have the responsibility of approving a project, but we don't have any authority in granting that project in the end. CRMC does. So people have to come to us and say, hey, this is really what I'd like to do. First thing we ask them is, have you got your wetlands situated enough so that we can figure out whether or not we can permit this, or do you need more variances? And then if you do, it's like, okay, these variants are going to need CRMC to approve them. So those would probably be conditions that we would put in. They go to zoning. And only then will CRMC talk to them. So this isn't us. This is the state. And it is not a pure straight line. So again, you can prove anything you want. It depends on what you want to come out with at the end.
So,
Oh, yeah,
my
go ahead.
apologies for interrupting.
Nope,
I know
nope,
it's
no,
in between you both.
appreciate it.
So just if I might alleviate some concerns if I just let you know the two potential requirements in the special review uses, which I think you're both touching on, both you, Mr. Brady, and Mr. DeSimone, which is, the town may require any or all of the following to properly execute a building permit, and that's A, which says a verified wetland edge or preliminary determination from either RIDEM or CRMC, depending upon their jurisdictional authority. As I just mentioned, both have authority in town. And B, an approval from RIDEM or CRMC is applicable prior to the issuance of a building permit. If the project necessitates any other approval, such as approval shall be necessary before the issuance of a building permit. So the special review uses informs the town, and it also informs the applicant when they're coming through that they're either in a jurisdictional area and they have to go to another regulating body, or that the town may need more information before a building permit can be issued.
So can I just ask a quick question, since I'm kind of lost in the process? So I'm having a hard time here. So whether you only have to come to the town if you need a special use or a building permit, otherwise you can go straight to CM, or everybody has to come no matter what?
CMC requires you come to us.
Come to you to get your,
And eventually you have to go, yeah, to see whether it's a buildable, whether you're approved for the project. At that point in time, you go to CMC and say, look, we've been approved. You know, if they don't want to adopt some of the conditions, those would go. And CMC then reviews it based on their own standards. And they may adjust those lines in or out. If they come in, then that affects the project also.
And just a
So-
point of clarity, CRMC is the Coastal Resources Management Council.
Yes.
No, I-
Correct.
yeah,
Just so
thank
that
you.
everyone's
If-
clear.
If I could just dovetail off what Mr. Brady said, if a project doesn't need any other relief, it's in a
Nothing.
freshwater wetland and it doesn't need any other relief.
Correct.
The applicant is informed through the building review permit process, that's e-permitting for those of you who've ever filed a permit in the last 5 years here in town. And they're informed that they're in that area and that they're either going to need an they should look into whether or not they need an exemption, or in CRMC's case, an assent, DEM is a permit. If they don't need any other relief, they pull a building permit. They don't need any relief from us for wetlands.
so they don't have to come to the town?
No, not
No,
for wetlands.
not if they-
No.
So
Not
you
if-
just said everybody had to come?
No.
They have to come
excuse
for
me.
a building
In-
permit.
Initially.
I was thinking from the basis of what we review.
Okay,
If you can just get a building permit, we never see you. So they're not even in our thought process. They would just go straight to CRMC.
so only if you have a problem and need some kind of a variance or special use, then you have to come to the town?
It could be you need 3 or 4 variances for other things.
Okay.
Then it comes to us.
But you have to
If
come.
you just need a building permit, that means you're not requesting any variances, everything was in, boom, 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 you just go to CRMC. And I don't even think about those, because those come under Wayne's jurisdiction. Which is 95%. Right, which is most of the applicants.
Of course.
Just to be
Sorry,
clear.
Tom.
Now, Tom's got.
Just to be clear, you have to come to the town to get a building permit,
Correct.
okay? If, looking at the building permit, there's no other variance that's required other than a CRMC or a DEM approval, then you have to go to DEM and get that, and then come back and you can start building.
Okay,
So you do have to come to the town on the front
No,
end.
no,
But
I'm
whether you
sorry,
come
I
to
get
us or not depends on whether or not you're looking for a variance for something.
thank you.
And
Thank you
Ms.
for that
McNally,
clarification.
Even if you need relief for something else and you're in a freshwater wetland, you still don't need relief from the town for that freshwater wetland.
Right.
Even if
So-
you need a dimensional variance for something else, you no longer need relief for a freshwater wetland in the town.
Okay.
Those are the changes that we made in 2023.
So then let me just try to put this in perspective. So I come to the town for a variance or whatever.
A building permit.
A building permit. No, but I want to have to go to see him. I want to have to come
Well,
to
you
the
would
town.
come in for a building permit, and
and
then
then-
Wayne would say, no, you need to get
this,
these.
okay.
And then you would come through.
Then we come to you.
Yes.
So you deny me.
No, we don't. We just recommend. We would forward it to the zoning board saying,
Right.
we approve this with the following conditions. And,
Okay.
and it may be that we're looking at the wetlands and saying, hey, we've got to give you a heads up here. The CMC, based on our experience, isn't. But we're not denying anything.
But you could
We're
recommend
just flagging
denying,
you of
though.
saying, here's things you got to look for.
Okay.
And we talked to them about it, and we talked to them about it as a conversation and support to them. They
Okay.
then go to zoning.
Okay?
Zoning can deny it, or
Yeah.
they pass it on, and then it goes to CRMC.
Okay. So-
let me ju-
Is there a way to streamline that? So as Mr. DeSimone said, I mean, people don't have to spend,
Could it just go
time
straight to
going through-
zoning?
Through planning, going through zoning.
Since it has to
Can we
be
just go just
CRMC,
to
that makes the
zoning,
final
maybe?
decision.
No, it has to be
anyway.
CRMC.
Right, it has to be CRMC
No, right.
anyway, but
Can
I'm
we
just
just go to
wondering,
zoning?
is this an area where it could just go straight to zoning?
I would just,
And
yeah, I'd
then
like to know if that
just to,
can
like,
happen.
And I'm not trying, you guys have so much
just trying
work
to
on your plates
streamline.
as it is.
So the,
Well, no, I'm just, sorry. All right.
so the answer to the question is yes, but do you want that? Again, that's a policy decision.
Yep.
Question is whether or not, from a policy perspective, you believe, based on the evidence in the record that the planning board in its review provides the zoning board with a better product when it goes forward. If the answer to that question is no, you go one way. If the answer to that question is yes, you go somewhere else.
So tell me why it's important for that. Like, is it because, I don't want to say that you don't trust the zoning board, but is it because I don't, like, what is, so tell me the reason.
It's just on
Statutorily,
the
that's the way the
books.
process works.
Yeah.
We are an
We esta-
advisory, excuse me, we're an advisory board to you, but we are an advisory board to the zoning board.
Okay.
We have expertise that they don't. So we are the in-house consulting to you and to the zoning board.
Thank you.
The question becomes this, and again, it's policy. You can just send people straight to zoning. The question is, do you want to do that? And do you want to do that for the people? They come to us, we give them a non-binding recommendations of, hey, here's what we see based on law, and that's what we base things on, of issues. And usually in those discussions, because we cannot legally be part of the project, and we kind of get involved, and our council has always been the adult in the room and saying, stop, because we cannot be part of the project. But from that, people adjust their projects. So when they go to zoning, they may only have one variance instead of 3. Or the variance goes from an extreme variance to a minor variance. You eliminate us, those 4, hold on. If you streamline it and eliminate us from the process, they go straight to zoning. All zoning has the authority to do is deny them or pass them. If they deny them, now you're in court.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the process.
no,
I'm
I
not trying to eliminate anyone.
I told you
I'm just
before, keep
trying to
asking
figure
questions.
out-
Your questions are great.
This is definitely all
I'm just trying to
general
figure
and
out the
hypothetical.
process
Again,
is what
nothing's
I'm trying to
been
do.
proposed.
So
This
your
is all part of
questions are
learning.
great, but that's the thing that we do. And if it just goes straight to zoning, zoning only has the option of denying or accepting. And so they can't accept with conditions because then they're not really accepting.
Okay, you may have answered
And then the only
this.
recourse is for, and they can. So, but the only recourse to someone is then to go to court.
Okay, so you may have already answered this, and I may have already forgot, but, so if they deny you, then you don't CRMC, you don't go there. Is that true? Or you could still go there and I'm just really,
No,
I'm so confused.
it's a
that's okay.
convoluted process.
If
Go
I
ahead.
could talk about the technical aspect,
Yeah,
I'll
please.
leave the big picture up to
Thank
bigger
you.
minds. But, no, for real. I mean, you guys are looking at big picture stuff. But at the, where the rubber meets the road, I think we're conflating here the 2 overlay districts that we have, which is the coastal and freshwater wetlands overlay, which we no longer, since 2023, require any relief for.
Okay.
If you come for a building permit and you need a variance for something else, you're going to go through the process with us for your variance, and then you're going to move on to whichever jurisdictional body it is. If the town needs information from you, the applicant, because you have a wetland running through the middle of your property, because we use that wetland information in other sections of our ordinance, I think that's section 6.4, but regardless, then we can request information. But we no longer, and have not since 2023, required any relief for freshwater wetlands. Coastal wetlands, coastal features we talked about, that's a different animal.
Okay.
Both of those processes, if you don't need any other relief, and it should be noted here that we also have a section in our ordinance, section 16, which allows for administrative approvals. So there's a whole layer that this board never sees. We do between 3 and 6 staff reviews a month. People who are coming in and they're close and we have a certain level of comfort, but it doesn't rise to the level of needing board review. We do that, that's administrative, done in 1 to 3 weeks, done. So I just want to be clear that won't come to this board if it's a wetland, a freshwater wetland at all,
Okay?
okay?
I got that.
All right.
I got that.
But doesn't it go as a special use permit?
No, not since
But
2023.
it's still in the ordinance, right?
No, it's not.
Isn't the ordinance updated?
This isn't the 4.3.5?
Four-
Updated as of like,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Torialde. 4.3.5 is special review uses, which I just read to you a minute ago, which says we still use the information, and we use it for a couple of different reasons. We use it to determine whether or not you're in a jurisdictional area, and we use it to determine whether or not we, the town, might need more information from the applicant. As I just mentioned, a wetland runs through the middle of your property, and we need to know what your lot area is. But there's no special use permit that's required. It's just putting the applicant and the town, it's letting every resident out there and the applicant know that we may be requiring additional information, and/or you might just be going to the jurisdictional body for approval.
what is the special review process?
I'm sorry, did I say jurisdictional element? I mean jurisdictional body.
What is the
So,
special
RIDEM
review?
or CRMC.
What is the special review process?
So through, as I mentioned earlier, so through the building permit review, most applications, the building inspections department also has access to the same information. So if it's nowhere in proximity to a wetland, the planning department never sees it at all. There are, probably hundreds. I wouldn't even be able to tell you how many building permit applications the planning department doesn't see. But if it is within a jurisdictional, it appears to be, and I don't know how Mr. Pimentel uses that gauge, but I suspect if there appears to be a wetland on the lot, the process in e-permitting is it gets flagged to the planning department, and the planning staff look at it and we say, oh yeah, hey, there looks like there's a wetland on your property, there's a wetland near your property. By the way, applicant, you appear to be within a jurisdictional area. You may want to reach out to that jurisdictional body. Or, yes, in fact, you have a wetland on your lot, and you will need to reach out to that jurisdictional body. CRMC or DEM.
So that could be the only advice you're giving them?
Yes,
That could be it, so
correct.
they
The
don't
building
have to...
review process. Mhm.
I think
I'm sorry, Jill. So we're not enforcing the setbacks that are in the ordinance? We're not asking people to ask for variances from the setbacks that we have in our
Not for
ordinance
freshwater
now?
wetlands, Mr. DeSimone, no.
No. Okay, that's news to me. That's great. So let's get rid of them then. That makes sense. If we're not enforcing them anyway, why are they?
As I just mentioned, we're using the information to inform the applicant of a couple of things. They're either in the jurisdictional area or that the town may need additional information in order to issue a building permit.
Sure. But why are the setbacks there? Like, we already know that they have to have the wetland edge delineated, they need a Class 1 survey. We have all these requirements. To have a wetland setback that we can't enforce in our ordinance seems onerous to me. And I've already seen, you're right, it was a coastal feature that somebody came before us asking for a variance for. But I would have to check with the solicitors. I didn't think we were allowed to regulate coastal features either.
I think we were waiting for an answer for that.
Right, so the ordinance requires a special use permit in some respects. Is that correct? In the coastal.
Sorry,
It's
Mr.
just
Conley?
the ordinance requires a special use permit in some respects for coastal overlay district, correct?
Coastal feature.
Coastal, either one.
There are two separate sections of our ordinance,
Right, 4.3 and 4.4.
4.3 and 4.4.
Right. And doesn't the special use permit in section B refer to So when do these, the question, I think the question that the board wants to know is when do these special use permits get triggered where the planning board has to make an advisory opinion to the zoning board?
Absolutely. So I think maybe where the confusion is coming in, and correct me if I'm wrong, is number 3 under special use permit uses in section 4.3. The state law, when it changed, only refers to freshwater wetlands. Section 4.3 is coastal and freshwater wetlands. So a la marsh or some other saltwater wetland, which is still, the town still regulates. That area also doubles as a coastal feature in many instances. If it is a freshwater wetland only, it does not trigger any relief from the town.
So what happens if the planning board makes a recommendation and the zoning board denies the special use permit on this basis as a town ordinance? Does it still go to CRMC? It doesn't, right?
No, it doesn't.
So it just dies there.
Well, it depends on which jurisdictional area. It could die at the town, yes. If it is DEM, the relief may die, but the permit still stands. So they're different animals, CRMC and DEM.
Right, and then in 4.3, in the special use permit, development standards, it has a 100-foot setback from the wetland edge. That's still in effect?
So I want to say, and I would agree with Mr. DeSimone, that perhaps those numbers should be coordinated with the jurisdictional areas, and those could be revised to coordinate with the jurisdictional areas of either CRMC or DEM. They did change the rules, and it depends on which type of community you're in, which would more align with informing applicants if they're within that jurisdictional area. So that is certainly something that could be corrected and updated should the council like.
And section 4B also references 50-foot setback from the wetland edge and also 50-foot setback. So these ordinances still refer to setbacks on these wetland areas, which is prohibited by the state law. I think that's what the question.
For freshwater wetlands.
Well, I think that's your interpretation of it. That's one interpretation.
That's one interpretation,
Right.
correct? Yep.
Right. I think that's, it's not.
Sure, that was the interpretation, and that was vetted and found to be compliant when we put the ordinance through.
Right, understood.
Thank you
I'm
so
sorry,
much.
I'm
Yep,
sorry, when you
go
said
ahead.
put the ordinance through, you mean when it was actually approved by the council, the prior council?
Correct.
And-
So we needed to comply when the state promulgated the rules in 2022. We needed to comply, so staff drafted. It was vetted at that time through, we had 2 or 3 solicitors around that time. It was vetted through at least 2 solicitors when it went through, and it was vetted to be compliant.
Okay. And it was also vetted as part of our process in terms of reviewing the materials that this council sent to us prior, back in April,
Yes.
right?
I'm sorry?
It was also vetted as part of.
Yes.
We also vetted it with our council. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And yes, your current council
Thank
vetted
you.
it as compliant. The planning board's council.
Thank you. I know you've had your red light
Yeah,
on for quite a while, Mr. Durkin. Do you have any comments on this?
No, I just thought it was clear that the state worked on these, both CRMC and DEM for multiple years, and those years were probably because of COVID, so it probably lasted longer for the purpose of eliminating 32 cities and towns from duplication of efforts on wetlands. So, I don't know why I guess we're discussing it, but I'm surprised we're even discussing it to this length, because I thought it was going to be easier than the other one.
To be fair, I asked the questions.
Yeah.
So
I just
think it was very important for us to get the information out there. It's a good opportunity for the council to get this kind of information.
CRMC's new rules are pretty clear. It's like you hire a wetlands biologist, and they mark the wetlands with little flags, and then the state comes out and looks at the little flags and agrees with them or not, and then they charge you $1,000 or $3,000, and they send you a little map, and your site plan shows that. So you can have that done prior to your project for your lot. And it's very clear what your buffers and setbacks are now. So they actually agree with the biologist. He establishes the buffers, and they just say yes or no to those. So it should be a one-stop shop, but it's a two-stop shop because of this ordinance.
But just correct me if I'm wrong here, I hear you, but then the feedback that we were provided was in order for CRMC to make a judgment on this, they need at least the opinion from the zoning board, right? As if it was like a yes or no?
Well,
Or did I not understand correctly?
but you
Sorry
can
about that.
go to the zoning board, with your site plan and your delineated wetlands and get approved and then go to CRMC, right?
If you don't need to go to the zoning board at all, I'm not sure why you would. I mean, I'm
That's
just
fa- that's
saying,
fair.
if you,
Why wouldn't you just go to
if you
CMC?
have a
Oh, well then-
wetland
Okay,
that's.
that's where
Well, that
it
would
was
make it
foggy.
very
That
easy
makes
If you have a
sense.
freshwater wetland that's delineated
That
on your
makes sense.
lot, and,
Thank
and
you.
you have already spoken with CRMC or DEM and placed your house in such a way that they are satisfied with it, and you can pull a building permit without needing relief, I would recommend you do so.
Well, you can't pull the permit because of the zoning ordinances that are still in place.
Yeah, that's the exact question, Jill, is that the setbacks that we have on the books, if you only need a small relief from one of the coastal or wetland setbacks, you still have to ask this board and the zoning board.
Not for freshwater wetlands, only for a coastal feature or a coastal wetland, and only if it's within 50 feet and not, and closer than any other existing development, which is section 16 of our ordinance. So no, you don't. You may need an administrative approval, as I mentioned earlier, which is also section 16, but you don't need relief from or permission from the zoning board.
Okay, so we have setbacks on our books that we don't require people to ask permission to violate or to vary from.
Not from freshwater wetlands, no. The setback for a coastal feature is 200 feet, and that's in section 4.4. I would agree that the setbacks that we reference are our old setbacks, and perhaps they should be updated to CRMC or DEM's jurisdictional areas.
I thought you'd done that already. I thought that you had matched the DEM and CRMC setbacks, because ours used to be
I would have to
200
check
feet,
that,
and now
Mr.
they're 50
Mr.
and
Eastman.
150
I
and 200.
I don't recall that, but I could check that.
Okay.
At the interest of saying we haven't, that could be something that could be updated. And CRMC's, these state regulations are different depending upon what your site analysis looks like, whether you are a vacant, undisturbed lot and, next to a bog, or if you're, on a road that has houses all around you and you're next to a,
Sure, but
an isolated wetland. So
This
it's
law
different.
that they promulgated set universal setbacks for different wetlands, coastal, freshwater in vicinity of the coast, saltwater. And I was under the understanding that we had
I just
matched
wanna get back
those within 18 months. Wasn't that what happened on the first slide?
Hold on. I'm
They
just
gave
getting
us
back
18
there.
months, and then we did it, and,
Yeah, we did it.
but we're still enforcing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're telling me
So
we're
there are
not,
no-
that's great.
There are no setbacks in the law.
I think Mr. Callahan just read them to you.
No, I think he read us the setbacks in our ordinance, did he not?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Sorry, there's no setbacks in the law? They
There's no
didn't-
setbacks in this law. In
Okay.
the rules that were promulgated from
Yes.
CRMC and DEM, there are. And those, our ordinance could be aligned with those so that we could better inform an applicant.
Okay, I thought we had done that.
I have in my notes that we were, but we have been
We may have,
focusing.
it's been years.
We have been focusing on
You guys
other
have had a lot
things.
going on, yeah.
We've had a lot more demands on us, and there's a lot of stuff that we've had that we wanted to get to that we haven't been able to.
Okay, so the old setbacks that we have that don't align with DEM and CRMC, they're in our ordinance, we don't enforce them for freshwater wetlands.
We use them. We
That
use-
wasn't my question, though, we don't enforce them,
No, we don't enforce.
and we
for
can't
freshwater
enforce
wetlands.
them. So
No,
when
we
somebody's
cannot enforce
looking at our ordinance, trying to figure out what to put on their property, They're looking at ordinances that we can't enforce and don't even ask them to comply with, but they're there, as a informative tool. Is that accurate?
They're there as an informative tool.
Okay. I would,
Fair point, Steve.
Fair-
So
fair
is your
point,
point, is your point to now align the town's setbacks with the setbacks that have been promulgated by CRMC and DEM, or is it to eliminate them?
my point would be to eliminate them.
That's what we're
because
trying to get
Yeah,
at.
they're confusing and they're extra and we can't use
Well,
them, so.
if they mirror DEMs and CRMCs, how are they confusing?
So here's how it's confusing. If they mirror CRMCs and DEMs, but I want to get a variance from those setbacks, say it's 10 feet, right? I need that variance from CRMC or DEM. It's in our ordinance, so it would be my opinion that I still need them from the town. Is that not correct?
It is correct if you are a coastal wetland.
Okay, so if
Which
it's a
is
freshwater
not
wetland, which we still have setbacks on the books for, they're not enforceable and they're not part of my building permit application, they just don't matter to me as anything other than informative. And so I would say just pull them out, because you're gonna direct them to DEM or CRMC anyway, because you know they're near a wetland, you're requiring a Class 1 survey, it's in our ordinance that you require wetland delineation if there's wetlands on the property, so you're going to send them to the bodies that regulate them. Why are we putting in regulations that we don't enforce? It seems like a superfluous regulation.
My guess, fair argument, Steve, but where it falls in my judgment, there is a lot of ordinances in town that are not enforced.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
But we're here for.
I don't think we have enough time to review all of that.
We're not here for those tonight.
So if I
So if
might,
we're doing that, we're going to be here for a while.
Can I ask a
if
quick
I'm-
question?
go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have any numbers on how many have been applied for and how many have been denied in like the last decade? Or can we get those numbers?
Been denied for a coastal wetland or a freshwater wetland?
Either one, or both?
I can only think of one application that was denied for a freshwater wetland. It was before I got here, but I was here when it came back. And the reason why it was denied is because it didn't offer testimony on the record that the project complied with the development standards. So the applicant came back, offered the testimony, and the application was approved
Okay.
for coastal and, or freshwater wetlands.
Okay.
I can't think of another one. I've only been here 13 years, but I can't think of another one.
Okay, and thank you. And I do agree with Mr. DeSimone that if there were a way to remove or align or whatever so that we could streamline the process more, I would love to see that.
again, I went through my notes. This has been on our to-do list for a while now, and we've been occupied with other things, and there's a number of things on our to-do list that we've not been able to get to because of that.
So are you saying you were going to eliminate it from the ordinance? and
No,
You haven't got to
I'm not
it?
saying that. I said it's on our to-do list. We discuss things as a group. As you see, not all of us have the same opinion. We come to a consensus, and then we make a recommendation to you, and then you vote it into law.
Yeah, so I don't know. From what I heard tonight, even it justifies more how much it's just cumbersome for people. And I don't think we need an ordinance so people can come in and find out where their wetlands are. We have maps online that, I've seen maps that the town has that it calls them suspected wetlands, I mean, what's that? Suspected wetlands, It's like, the biologist is the one who determines the area that's the wetland. It can't be done any other way, as far as I know, unless it's
So
like,
I can tell you what the 2007 GIS layer suspected wetlands is. So when the wetlands overlay went into effect in 86 or 87, it was mostly ground truthed. So when you look at that information, which was then later digitized into GIS in 2001, that is the layer that you'll see online. The suspected was done through LiDAR, so the town had a flyover and they looked at that. The reason why it's suspected is because it hasn't been verified on the ground. again, we use that suspected as an informational tool to either go in and look to see if if it overlays, typically when that suspected wetland overlays with the one that had been ground truth previously, we have a pretty good confidence that they may be within, there may be a wetland on lot. But sometimes you're right, Mr. Durkin, that suspected wetland turns out to be nothing but, standing water in someone's backyard.
So it takes time to get to all that stuff. And, I think the state is kind of clear. They don't want us determining the presence of wetlands, coastal or freshwater. And I don't know how much clearer it can be, but
I know
that's
it's-
what the
sorry.
impression I'm under. I don't know.
So all I would like to say as closing statement is, quite honestly, I think we in this room can't even, well, you get it, Jill. You get it. Thank God someone does. But I think the rest of us are still trying to comprehend all this. And I think, and unfortunately, I read an article and I have a quote, but I failed to say who said it. I know it was a legislator. And it's just a quote that I want to read because I agree with it 1,000%, and that's why I wrote it down. And it said there's a need for strong, uniform, statewide legislation that all developers need to follow. This is against the coastline. This should not vary from place to place and would not only protect our wetlands, but streamline the process to help develop more affordable housing. Our state agencies have the resources and expertise who are capable of making those decisions. And I apologize for not writing down who said it, but I wrote it down because I agreed with it when I read it. So, that's how I think.
You should credit yourself.
Yeah, I should have credited myself, but it's not me.
That was that lady Carson.
Oh, yeah, I honestly don't remember who said it, but I
She's a
did read it.
representative in, like,
And I read it and I said, oh,
Little
this is,
Compton or
this is,
something.
so it was a legislator and thank you, thank you.
So, again, I really appreciate everything that's been shared. I think this has been a tremendous dialogue, and I do want to dive into.
Alex, mind
Oh,
if I
yep,
say
sorry.
something
I
real
I don't
quick?
look enough this way. Yes, sorry
So,
about that.
from what I hear, this is an entirely messed up process from the top down. CRMC requires an approved variance from us.
They need to have that, you have a buildable project.
Okay. With it being a buildable project, a variance is a part of that?
It might be.
Can be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be.
And it sounds to me, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouths, but at this point in time, we are only using the setbacks as informational resources for people applying for said variance for the buildable project.
Yeah. It's, I guess, I hate to say a service. We don't call them there for the wetlands, but while they're in front of us, we'll explain to the process and what they should and should do, and just try to help them.
Yeah.
That's all.
So,
Mr. Torre, that's accurate, but for coastal features.
Right.
But for coastal features are not,
I
are
agree. Thank
subject
you.
to the town's jurisdiction.
Now, you were talking wetlands, so I just focused on
yeah,
wetlands.
no, that's fine.
Right.
Okay. Since it doesn't sound like, or maybe it does, I don't know, I can't get any consensus from them. But for me at least, I don't think we can necessarily strip the setbacks from the ordinance. The most tangible action coming out of this would be to update the setback ordinance to CRMC's definitions, whatever that may be.
I'm not talking for the board. Again, on our list was to look at exactly this, is modifying the setbacks so that people have a clearer view that, okay, in this area, these are your setbacks based on CRMC. In this area, this is your setbacks. And again, this is just in wetlands, freshwater wetland, to assist the people in their project.
Okay.
And it's something we've been trying to get to. Other things get pushed to the top and it gets pushed to the bottom.
So barring the coastal feature, is there a variance that someone in this freshwater district would need to apply for?
For the wetland setback?
For the wetlands freshwater overlay,
freshwater?
is there a variance that they would need to apply for?
No.
Short of the coastal feature?
I mean,
from the town?
yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
So in a sense.
it would be, if they're requiring a variance, it would be on the building itself.
Then, perhaps forgive my terminology here, but,
Variance that would be required would have to be granted either by DEM or CRMC.
yep,
They'd have to.
Wetlands.
On the wetlands.
On wetlands.
That's correct.
On this level, the only variance would be on the building itself.
okay. So then, again, at this point in time, we cannot approve, we cannot deny, we only forward on with the notes and flags that you have delineated. Ms. Sabo, is there anything in this process that you think could speed things along, or given the backwards process that it is this the most efficient that it can be?
I haven't put a lot of thought into that, Mr. Torialde. I will say that the process has been sped along with the changes in state law. I'm certainly happy to go back with the planning board and figure out if section 4.3 could be revised to make things more clear, easier, however. We're 2025, so this new regulation has only been in effect for 3 years.
Okay.
And honestly, we see a lot less applications that come through. We did see before, prior to 2022, I had been here in 10 years at that point, we saw a lot of applications come through that were in that area that met those the criteria for relief from the town. We don't see those anymore, so it's been pretty streamlined since the state regs have taken place.
Okay.
But I'm happy to go back and look at that again, taking into consideration what the planning board said, Mr. DeSimone, and trying to figure out, Mr. Callahan, trying to figure out how to rework it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just a murky situation all around, I fear, and I don't think it's going to get solved tonight.
Well, again, I think this has been tremendously informative. One last question, actually, Ms. Sabo, before the council addresses some of the questions that we received. Do you have an approximate amount of time that you can help us to illustrate from the point in which it goes to, somebody submits a request, it goes to the planning board for review, it goes to the zoning board for review, and then it goes to CRMC? What is the, if you were to look at from the beginning to end, how much time elapses approximately before someone gets an answer?
If a project needs relief for
On
a
average.
coastal feature,
Yeah,
a relief through the zoning board, you mean?
correct. But starting from through the planning board to zoning
Oh,
and
so
into
just
CRMC.
once they file an application through
Yeah.
zoning, we're pretty quick, 2.5 months, unless there's a lot of other things on the planning board's agenda. The planning board does prioritize recommendations to town council and subdivisions ahead.
Right.
And they can only handle, and on occasion, actually, this year is a very good example of that. The planning board is been very willing, and thank you for that, to hold special meetings anytime I ask. So if there were ever a backlog, and there has been in the past, I'm sure folks here who've ever filed an application, we will hold 2 planning board meetings a month. We will do, one of the things we do for commercial projects, for instance, is we'll send, to try to speed up our commercial, our business, we'll try to do them back-to-back in 2 days, planning and zoning. So the planning board is very good at having special meetings if we're backlogged, but it is from application to town approval, 2 months, because it's a notification requirement between the recommendation from planning board, and there's for us to put it in the paper, it's 14, I think it's 14 days in the paper, but for my department to put it in the paper, it backs it out 20 days, because we have to get it to the paper. And then we have to make sure that the relief is actually correct, and then it moves to the very next month. So typically, it's back-to-back. Month 1 is planning, month 2 is zoning. And then we write a decision, it's reviewed by the solicitor, and the applicant can move forward with whatever body it is, DEM or CRMC.
Thank you. And I appreciate that response. And I know that they have their own timelines with the DEM and CRMC. but we're grateful for their services nevertheless. So appreciate the dialogue here this evening, and I'll allow the council to reflect on this as well. Before moving forward, did anyone else have any last questions or comments on that particular topic before diving into some of the questions pertaining to some of the topics tonight? Okay. So, and again, these questions have been forwarded to the planning board as well, and tried our best to make this as all-inclusive as possible. Did get an extensive number of emails since Monday regarding questions for topics to be discussed this evening. Some of them I think have been answered, but again, just to do our due diligence and for full transparency, I want to try to get through these as much as possible. First series of questions regarding the setbacks was, why does the town council want to allow larger homes built closer together, resulting in more rentals to more people, while considering sewer capacity concerns? And given the already overburdened water sanitation system, why is it appropriate at this time to consider amendments to zoning ordinances that will materially increase development in the town that will exacerbate that problem? And I wonder if anyone on the council has any comments to any of these questions, but I will just start off by saying we had a great presentation from the town engineering department and hearing from the public extensively on their concerns. I know, Mr. Durkin, I believe you've already visited with one of the residents who came with that same concern. But I fully support the updating of our sewer line, the wastewater treatment, to address these concerns, and I certainly wouldn't want to vote in favor of anything that will over-exacerbate the problem. So I think, you know, we've got to rely on our town experts to provide us with those recommendations. And I just wonder if anyone, in regards to building larger homes, again, I think I've already spoken my point of view. I don't want to develop. I would not be in favor of building up. But then, again, I'm just curious if anyone on the council has any questions or comments on that.
Do you want to comment on the question, on that one question?
No, I'm going through the series of questions that were submitted to the town council, which were also shared to the planning board. But most of these questions are asking for the town council's point of view. This is part of building that rationale as to why are we doing this.
I would just begin by saying that to assume that we want to build larger homes, build them closer together, resulting in more rental to more people, is basically saying that you know what we're thinking and where we're coming from. And quite honestly, what we want to do is we want to look at all these proposals, and we want to look at ways that we could work together collaboratively to try to streamline things, to try to make things better for residents. And that's, I think, what our goal is. I don't believe our goal is to build larger homes closer together and while considering, you know, not considering sewer capacity. I don't think that that's what we're doing, so I disagree with the question right off the top. I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk about why I feel it's important for the town of Narragansett to be able to look at these things and try to move forward and address some of those things, but that's not what I want to do. I want to make affordable housing for residents. I want seniors to be able to stay in pace, and all the things that I said up front is what I want to do. That's not what I want to do.
Anyone else have any comments on that before moving into sewer and water-related concerns?
I will also say that the question is kind of self-deterministic in that it immediately means that rentals will be benefiting from this. You know, we've heard some proposals and solutions tonight. I think to Mr. Friday raised this earlier, that, you know, we might be able to look at potentially bumping out or find the current setback, or finding a more reasonable percentage that we could allow people to expand their houses by, since, you know, the state allowed us to increase property or setbacks by 15%. up to 15% or whatever the exact verbiage is, maybe we can find a reasonable percentage that works for Narragansett.
Thank you. And some of these questions are related to sewer and water. Do you not care that the increased number of persons in a dwelling will further impact our already strained sewage and water systems? Referring to the August 4th meeting of the town council, the town engineer stated that the increase in density will impact sewer service, and the town engineer said that the increase in density was factored into the plan. Will the cost for upgrades to the sewer plant and pumping station be shared by sewer customers only, or the whole town, sewer and septic homes? Same for the expansion. Will that cost be paid by those beneficiaries of the expansion or the whole town in our taxes? And John, our town engineer, was so gracious to provide us with an explanation on this and stated that no general tax funds are used for sewer. All wastewater cost expenses are paid from the Wastewater Enterprise Fund, which is financed by user fees and user assessments. New assessments are applied to the beneficiaries for sewer expansion projects. And in additional, as far as the expansion plan for sewers, will existing septic homes be prioritized for connection before new added density customers? And his response to that was, existing septic homes with frontage to town sewers have access by right to connect. Major expansion projects must be approved by beneficiaries and would be driven by specific property owners in the proposed expanded service area. Note, ADUs are accessory to the main use by definition and cannot be considered as an additional connection. Therefore, ADUs have sewer access by right, where the existing dwelling is connected, has sewer frontage. Other increased density may be limited by sewer policy, section 2.d, states that permits will be issued on a one permit per unit basis with no more than one permit issued per platted lot. And as I continue here, aren't you happy you waited this long to hear some sewer-related commentary? Next topic of conversation was affordable housing. How do these amendments promote affordable housing as defined under Rhode Island state law? And again, I love to turn over the turn over the commentary to the rest of the council here. But again, initially I shared my perspective about the importance of being able to, recognizing, I think it was unanimously agreed upon how horrible of a housing market that we have, that the essence of affordability doesn't exist here, certainly doesn't exist here, it doesn't exist anywhere. And it's an ongoing challenge that the town council, the planning board, has consistently been working to address. We have an amazing affordable housing trust collaborative, affordable housing committee, who's dedicated to these services. I think and would recommend that maybe some of those individuals on those committees could provide us with their perspective on some of the ordinances as well. I think it sounds like there's a great amount of dialogue and collaboration that's going to be had again and continue to have between the planning board and the town council to work through some of these ordinances if any changes were to be proposed. But at least that's where I'm coming from. It's that affordable housing, it's the matter in which, the lens in which we're viewing. And I've already asked in previous meetings with the state to provide us with a model of what affordable housing looks like here in Narragansett. Because you go to any city or town and they will say that they're arguing in favor of affordable housing. The justification for this decision or that decision is affordable housing. Well, how about we get some additional guidance from the state? We'll start with the recommendations from some of our local committees as well. But I think it's really important to get this kind of clarity from the state as to what affordable housing looks like here in Narragansett as opposed to other cities and towns. Because again, a lot of the times we hear, oh, well, they're not doing that in Newport, or they're not doing that in Tiverton or Providence. But we're not any of those cities or towns. We're all unique. We're all unique cities and towns. That's why we have an elected body here in Narragansett. But this is a uniting issue in the state, and it affects all of us. And the demand isn't going anywhere. Regardless of whatever restrictions we're putting on or lessening, the demand for affordable housing is very real, and it's not going to be dissolved overnight, and it's not going to be solved by any of us sitting here. But we can certainly do our best to try to promote that vision moving forward. So at least that's where I'm coming from in regards to affordable housing. I don't know if anyone on the council has any other comments on that before moving forward.
I just think that it needs to be understood that we are looking through the lens of affordable housing as we are reviewing these. And I think one of the things that we've already done was when we did the ADUs, we said it had to be a full-time rental. I mean, it couldn't year-round rental. It could not be just a college seasonal and school year. It had to be so I think we're looking at it through the lens, and I think we're trying to do what we can to help with the affordable housing, and I think that that's the goal. And that's the goal, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think I know this council really well, and I think that's the goal of all of us, to look at these ordinances through the lens of what we can do to promote and help. It may be baby steps. They may be really small, but we're going to try to do what we can.
Can I ask?
Sure.
When is the council going to send the ADU to us so we can get it right back to you?
The what? The ADU?
Yeah.
That was approved.
No, that was approved. I'm sorry. I was out of town.
Chapter 1137.
Yeah, I was out of town. I wasn't here.
Yeah, I was like, I assumed I was reading a
No, I wasn't here.
approved version.
I wasn't here, and I
No, that's
apologize.
all right. This came directly from Ms. Sabo, so
Yeah.
I
No, I
appreciate
wasn't
that
here.
reference. Nope, that's all right.
I
Yeah, Chapter
apologize.
1137 seems
You leave for
to
a month and the world
seems
changes.
to-
It's like,
to-
what the?
Well, you sneeze and everything becomes different overnight. So appreciate that question, though. And again, I'm looking at both sides, so just hit the button and interrupt me if you need to answer anything. And this is in regards to wetlands. I think we've very thoroughly reviewed this concept. I think the questions that have been asked, is your goal that wetlands and coastal buffers be ignored? No. We live a few hundred feet from a main line, but our 2 streets were skipped on Meadows Lane. Some of the homes on our street border freshwater wetlands. Will we have priority over increased density for sewer hookup? I actually don't have an explanation on that.
It's near Wandsworth. It's like near Stop and Shop. It's in that area. Yeah, it's west of 108. So I believe it's part of the SAMP area. So if they want sewer, they're going to have to apply. The town will have to apply with them for a variance from the SAMP plan from CRMC to get a sewer extension down their road. It was part of the old sewer plan because everything was. I don't know whether or not it was in the new one. It was a long plan in my.
I heard Wandsworth in the new one.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. It probably should be. I know it's going to take, to get a sewer west of 108 is a long process. So.
And then in regards to the 5 unrelated, that's already on our books. It's been codified. And then there was a question submitted in regards to state law, given that the planning board in the past has already rendered its opinion that the current zoning ordinances comply with state law. What is the legal support for the statements that these amendments are required to comply with Rhode Island state law? And the only, again, I think we've visited a lot of this topic of conversation this evening. But one thing, at least from what's been, from my perspective, is we are in compliance with state law, but there are ways, perhaps, in which we can be more in line with state law, or there are ways in which we can better address some of the concerns within our community based on feedback received this evening. But again, nothing at this point has been proposed as an amendment. This was just a really terrific conversation that I value, and I hope the residents do as well. And because I certainly learned a lot tonight, and I hope the planning board kind of knows a little bit more about who we are, even though I feel like I may have inadvertently, next time someone steal the mic from me, talk too much on a lot of these things.
So I can jump in on the state law.
Yep,
one
go
for a
ahead.
second. I think that you're right, that when I look at it, I want to see a little bit more alignment with the state law, because I mean, there's a lot of good reasons for that. We're looking for money from the state, we're looking for money from the federal government, and I feel like if we have a better relationship with them, that we would benefit financially from that. To be fair.
Thank you. And I think I just want to quickly read, because this one came in the last minute at the time in which I was printing these, and I do apologize that I'm sure that there were additional questions that came in after the time in which all of this was compiled and shared with the planning board. If your question or answers to your questions were not addressed during tonight's meeting, I recommend that members of the town council do whatever they can to assist or work with Jim Tierney and Ms. Sabo to put them into contact with those individuals who can best provide those answers. And I believe I would be remiss if after all this time I didn't recognize everyone here for their service and the amount of time that you've provided. Wayne, I do see you over there. Is there, and I know you're not sitting up here, but is there anything additional that you could provide us with any context for the topics of conversation that were shared this evening? I know you're not at the microphone, so I would invite you up if you would like to say anything, or if you're satisfied with the discussion this evening, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Again, really appreciate it, Wayne, John, Ms. Sabo, the whole planning board for your cooperation, as well as our solicitors, clerk, town manager, and town council for their cooperation, and the participation from the public. Please keep sending your questions. Again, if we did not answer your questions, please continue to send them. We'll try to figure out the best way to streamline getting those answers to you. We do get a lot of emails, and I do apologize to some of the members of the planning board that there was 7 or 8 emails in a response, and I opened up one of those 8 in a chain and thought that I had read all of them. I'm learning this process. So again, really appreciate everyone's time, and I hope you have a great evening.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
Before we close this, I had some that were sent to me that I know weren't sent
Sure.
to anybody else, and a lot of these, like you, I printed them up on the way, and I do not advise splitting a screen on your phone. It's just not. Not with my eyes. I'm trying to summarize these, and I'm also trying to take emotion out of these. They're very emotionally filled. There were infrastructure questions where if we're going to larger homes, more bedrooms, is there consideration to the impacts on our present infrastructure and what that could do? Also, effects on affordable housing. How does larger homes equate to affordable and not rental? There were a number of questions on council explaining state compliance. I think you stated that we are in compliance, and I thank you for that. How long realistically will the fix of the infrastructure take? How the proposed zoning changes would affect the system in the interim? Long term, I can tell you, and it didn't mention that night, but I praise the consultants and Wayne, John, they actually took state law into consideration as far as looking at the future. Can upgrades plans be fully account for the increased demands that would result in zoning amendments? again, trying to filter out the emotions here. The expression that the planning board, the town council and planning board's time would be better taken looking at affordable housing, contaminated water, and issues, sewer capacities, rather than this state law compliance. There is a...
Yeah, I tried to do a lot. I had a lot of those same questions,
Yeah.
which I tried to put into one workable
Trying
document.
to take the emotion out.
Yeah.
There were a number of questions here on, I apologize, Councilor Durkin, because there are too many to not. Councilor Durkin's participation in this discussion based on ethics. There's also a full, lastly, in interest of full transparency, I believe it's important for any and all counselors to identify personally or professionally would they gain directly or indirectly from any of the passages of these. There is...
And can I just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
In regards to the ethical interpretation from residents, ourselves, Mr. Brady, you and I both sat in this room, and you asked the question to the Ethics Commission.
I did.
And I heard an answer that I'm sure you didn't like, because it's not the answer that
No,
any...
I know what they... I don't
it's
ask
not the-
questions unless I know the answer.
Well, it was interesting to hear, because it was the question of if there's anyone on any elected body present that thought that there might be an ethical violation of participating in a conversation or a vote, that we do in fact not have the right to prevent any one individual from participating or from participating in the vote. And this was in this room that was shared. Regardless of however I feel or however residents feel, it's every one of our duties, our responsibilities to evaluate what we believe is acting in an ethical manner. That the reason why we have an ethics commission is because they are the ones not associated with party. They are the ones that provide the final say as to whether or not any one individual or elected body is acting in an ethical manner. And I know that's not an answer that a lot of people appreciate. It's just that's the structure of review that we find ourselves here in the state of Rhode Island.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think most of these other questions aren't relevant to tonight, so we'd hold them back.
Yes, there is a lot related to rentals, which will be covered at a later time. So again, I really appreciate your time and your cooperation and the respect genuinely shared in this room and across the aisle, and I hope that this will continue, and I will advocate for that moving forward. And I want to adjourn, but I think we're good at 9:20 p.m. Have a great night, everyone.